20 people received those invitations. My college buddies, my work crew, my parents, Nora's sister Clara and her fiancé. Even my neighbor Dave, who once borrowed my lawnmower and never returned it. But hey, desperate times call for including lawn equipment thieves on your guest list. The responses? Crickets. Total radio silence. But I'm an optimist, right? Or maybe just delusional. I figured people were just busy, that they'd show up and surprise me with their presence. It's 2025, I told myself. Nobody RSVPs anymore. That's just what people do. I was basically gaslighting myself into believing I wasn't about to have dinner with a centerpiece. I'd specifically told Nora that morning, "Honey, tonight at 7 Salvatore's. Don't worry about anything. Just bring your beautiful self." She'd been on her phone, scrolling through what I assumed was Pinterest wedding stuff for Clara's upcoming nuptials, and she'd nodded without looking up. Sure, babe. That should have been red flag number 1. But I was too busy being excited about my birthday to notice that my wife had the enthusiasm of someone agreeing to jury duty. By 7:30, the waiter, this guy named Marco who looked like he'd seen some stuff in his serving career, but nothing quite like this, approached my table with the kind of cautious energy you'd use when approaching a wild animal. "Sir," he said, his Italian accent making even my humiliation sound elegant. "Should I, perhaps bring out the appetizers? Or would you like to wait for your guests?" "Let's give them a few more minutes," I said, trying to sound casual, like I wasn't slowly dying inside. "Traffic, you know how it is." Marco nodded, but his eyes told a different story. They said, "My friend, there is no traffic that makes an entire party disappear." But he was professional, I'll give him that. He just refilled my water glass and disappeared back into the kitchen, probably to tell the other staff about the sad guy in booth 7 who was about to eat enough calamari for 12 people by himself. At 8 o'clock, I finally pulled out my phone and started texting. First Nora. "Hey, where are you?" "Nothing." Then my best friend Jake from college. "Dude, you coming?" "Read at 8:03 p.m. No response. Then my mom. "Everything okay?" She replied 40 minutes later with, "Oh, sweetie, your father and I are at a pottery class." "Is that tonight?" A pottery class. My parents chose throwing clay over their only son's birthday. At least now I know where I got my winning personality. The breaking point came when Marco returned with the birthday cake I'd special ordered. A massive chocolate monstrosity with "Happy Birthday" legend written in gold frosting. Because yeah, I'd actually called myself a legend on my own birthday cake. The bakery lady had asked what I wanted it to say, and in a moment of what I thought was charming self-awareness, but was actually just sad, I'd gone with legend. Marco placed it on the table, and this giant balloon I'd requested, also proclaiming my legendary status, bobbed above it like a monument to my social failure. "Sir," Marco said, and I could hear the pity in his voice. "Should I cut the cake, or just you?" The way he said "just you" was so loaded with sympathy that I almost started laughing. Here was this stranger, this professional food bringer, showing me more consideration on my birthday than my actual family. "You know what, Marco?" I said, feeling that manic energy that comes right before you either cry or do something stupid. "Let's wrap this bad boy up. I'm taking this party to go." I handed him my credit card, the one that still had room on it before the Nora wedding expense avalanche of the following week, and tried to smile like this was all part of some elaborate plan. The bill came to $237. For context, that's about $50 per text message ignored. Marco wrapped up the untouched food in enough aluminum foil to roof a small shed, carefully boxed the cake, and even gave me a free tiramisu for the road. "Happy birthday, my friend," he said, shaking my hand. "You are too good for people who don't show up." I drove home in my Honda Civic, because of course a guy eating alone on his birthday drives a Civic, with a cake-riding shotgun and a balloon bumping against the ceiling every time I hit a pothole. My phone stayed silent the entire 15-minute drive. No calls. No texts. No sorry. Got stuck at that pottery class/work emergency/alien abduction that prevented me from acknowledging your existence. When I pulled into my driveway, the only one waiting for me was Toby, our 5-year-old golden retriever. I could see him through the front window, tail wagging, probably the only living being who'd actually been excited about my birthday. I walked in, put the cake on the counter, and Toby looked at me with those big brown eyes that somehow contained more empathy than my entire social circle combined. Even he seemed to be giving me that head tilt that dogs do when they're trying to figure out why they're human is so pathetically sad. I changed into sweatpants, grabbed a fork, and ate birthday cake directly from the box while Toby sat next to me on the couch. No plates, no dignity, just a 35-year-old man and his dog, watching SportsCenter highlights and contemplating what invisible superpower I'd unlocked to become this forgettable. As I finally crawled into bed around midnight, I remember thinking that maybe tomorrow would make sense. Maybe there was a surprise coming. Maybe I'd wake up to a flood of apologetic texts. Spoiler alert, I wouldn't. But what I would wake up to was way more interesting than apologies. I just didn't know it yet. 3 days after my birthday disaster, I'd reached what psychologists probably call acceptance, but what I prefer to call strategic emotional detachment. You know that stage of grief where you stop crying into your cereal and start just existing? Yeah, I was there, living my best numb life. I went to work at Davidson and Associates. I'm an accountant, which is exactly as thrilling as it sounds, and pretended that everything was totally normal. Nobody there knew about my birthday anyway because I'd learned years ago that telling coworkers about your birthday just guilts them into signing a card they don't mean and eating cake they don't want. My cubicle neighbor, Rita, this 50-something woman who'd been with the company since fax machines were considered cutting-edge technology, caught me staring blankly at my computer screen on day 2. "You okay, Leo?" she asked, peering over our shared cubicle wall with her reading glasses dangling from that beaded chain thing that every office lady over 40 seems to own. "You've been looking at that same spreadsheet for 20 minutes. Just contemplating the existential dread of quarterly tax estimates," I replied, which wasn't entirely a lie. Numbers don't forget your birthday. Numbers don't stand you up. Numbers are reliable, unlike literally every person I'd invited to Salvatore's. Rita laughed that raspy smoker's laugh of hers. "You need a vacation, honey. You're starting to look like you're doing taxes for the afterlife." She wasn't wrong. I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror that morning and legitimately scared myself. I looked like a guy who'd been personally victimized by buttercream frosting. At home, things were weird in that way that only married people understand. Nora had been there physically, sleeping in our bed, using our bathroom, leaving her hair straightener on the counter like a fire hazard waiting to happen. But emotionally, the woman was a ghost. We'd had maybe 3 conversations since my birthday, and they were all about mundane stuff like whether we needed more paper towels or if I'd remember to take the trash out. Not once did she mention the party. Not once did she say, "Hey, sorry I completely bailed on the one day a year that's supposed to be about you." I kept waiting for some grand explanation. Maybe she'd been planning a surprise, and it fell through. Maybe she'd been in a minor car accident that erased her memory but left her physically unharmed. Maybe she'd been abducted by aliens who specifically targeted women who forget their husbands' birthdays. But no explanation came. Just silence and the sound of her scrolling through Instagram at 11 p.m. while I pretended to sleep next to her. By day 3, I'd convinced myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe everyone had actually planned some elaborate delayed surprise, and I was just being impatient. "They're probably organizing something for this weekend," I told Toby during our morning walk. He looked at me with those judgmental dog eyes that said, "Dude, you're kidding yourself, and even I know it." I was in the middle of reconciling a client's business expenses, riveting stuff involving a lot of restaurant receipts and questionable business meetings, when my phone buzzed on my desk. It was 9:47 a.m., exactly the time when Nora usually took her first coffee break at the boutique marketing firm where she worked. I figured maybe, finally, she was going to acknowledge the elephant in the room. Maybe she'd text something like, "We need to talk about your birthday," or, "I'm sorry I'm the worst wife in the continental United States." I picked up my phone, swiped to unlock it, and read the message that would fundamentally change the trajectory of my entire marriage. "Hey, I need $15,000 for Clara's wedding dress. It's Vera Wong. Deposit due today." I read it 3 times. Then a 4th time, just to make sure I wasn't having a stroke or experiencing some kind of accountant-induced hallucination brought on by too much Excel exposure. $15,000. For a dress. For her sister. Due today. No, good morning. No, hope you're having a good day. Definitely no, hey, about your birthday. I'm a terrible person and here's why I missed it. Just a straight-up cash request with the casualness of someone asking to borrow a cup of sugar. The audacity was almost impressive. It took real talent to ignore someone's birthday and then hit them up for the price of a used Honda 3 days later. I sat there in my cubicle, staring at my phone like it had just told me the earth was flat and vaccines cause prosperity. Rita popped her head over the wall again. "You look like you just saw your own audit report," she said. "What's wrong?" "My wife just asked me for 15 grand, I said, still processing. "For her sister's wedding dress." Rita's eyebrows shot up so fast I thought they might achieve liftoff. 15,000? For a dress? What's it made of? Unicorn hair and good intentions. Apparently it's Vera Wang, I said, as if that explained everything. To Nora and Clara, dropping designer names was like casting a spell that made ridiculous expenses seem reasonable. "It's Vera Wang," was supposed to make me go, "Oh well, in that case, let me just liquidate my retirement fund." "Let me get this straight," Rita said, fully invested in my drama now. She pulled her rolling chair closer to the cubicle wall. "She didn't show up to your birthday." "Yes, I know about that. Janet from HR told everyone. And now she wants you to drop 15K on her sister's dress?" "Yep, I confirmed. That about sums it up. And the deposit is due today?" Apparently fashion waits for no man. Or budget. Rita let out a low whistle. "Leo, honey, I've been married 3 times. Trust me when I say this is what we call a red flag the size of Texas." Coming from someone who'd been through the divorce rodeo multiple times, this assessment carried weight. I looked back at my phone. The message just sat there, demanding and oblivious. "No, please. No, if you can. Just a statement of need." As if my bank account was a public utility designed specifically to fund Clara's wedding fantasies. For context, Clara was Nora's younger sister by 3 years, and she'd been engaged to her fiancé Brett for approximately 8 months. Brett worked in cryptocurrency, which I was pretty sure meant unemployed but with a Bitcoin wallet, and Clara worked as an influencer, which definitely meant unemployed but with an Instagram account. The wedding, scheduled for 2 months from now, had already cost me more money than I'd spent on my own wedding 8 years ago. I'd funded the engagement party, contributed to the venue deposit, and somehow got roped into paying for the rehearsal dinner because Brett's parents were going through a financial rough patch, which was rich people code for we don't want to spend our own money. And now, the dress. The $15,000 dress. I thought about my birthday party. The $237 bill for food nobody ate. The cake that was still sitting in my freezer because I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. The 8 missed calls I'd made that night trying to figure out where everyone was. That night, I would have been thrilled if someone had just sent me a happy birthday text. But asking for 15 grand? That got an immediate response request. My fingers hovered over my phone keyboard. Part of me wanted to type out a long message explaining exactly how insane this request was. I wanted to itemize every expense I'd covered for Clara's wedding so far. I wanted to mention that my birthday had been 3 days ago and I'd celebrated it with a dog and leftovers. I wanted to ask if she'd noticed that I existed at all outside of being a human ATM machine. Instead, I typed, "Sure thing." But here's the thing about being petty, and I was about to get exceptionally petty. Sometimes you have to play the long game. As I hit send on that message, I wasn't thinking about the dress. I wasn't thinking about Vera Wang or Clara or Brett and his imaginary cryptocurrency fortune. I was thinking about that $85 sushi platter from Salvatore's that nobody ate. I was thinking about my mom choosing pottery class over me. I was thinking about Nora lying next to me every night like I was just another piece of furniture. And I was thinking about symbolic gestures. Because if they wanted to treat me like I was invisible, then maybe it was time I started acting like their bank account was invisible too. Rita was still watching me from across the cubicle wall. "What did you say?" she asked. I told her sure thing. I replied, a smile starting to form on my face. It was the kind of smile that probably looked slightly unhinged, the kind of smile that comes right before someone does something they'll either deeply regret or feel absolutely fantastic about. "That's it. Just sure thing?" Rita looked disappointed, probably hoping for more drama. "Yep," I said, that smile getting wider. "I'm going to give her exactly what she asked for." Rita narrowed her eyes at me. "Why do I feel like you're planning something?" "Because I am," I said, turning back to my computer. "I'm planning to give my sister-in-law the most memorable wedding accessory in history." That evening, I sat at my home office desk, which was really just a corner of our guest bedroom that I'd claimed after Nora turned the actual office into her creative space, filled with vision boards and scented candles that smelled like eucalyptus dreams, or some other nonsense. And I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey. Not the good stuff that I saved for special occasions, but the middle-shelf bourbon that tasted like regret and bad decisions. Tonight called for bad decision juice. I opened my laptop, pulled up our bank's website, and stared at the login screen like I was about to perform open-heart surgery on my financial future. My finger hovered over the mouse, and I could hear Toby snoring in the corner, completely oblivious to the fact that his owner was about to commit what I like to call justified financial malice. In the background, I could hear Nora downstairs watching some reality show about rich people buying houses they didn't need. The irony wasn't lost on me. Our joint account, the one we'd opened together when we got married because that's what people in love do, apparently, showed a balance of $43,847.52. That number represented 8 years of my accounting salary, bonuses, tax returns, and careful budgeting. Nora contributed too, sure, but her boutique marketing salary mostly went toward things like self-care Sundays and a truly impressive collection of throw pillows that served no actual purpose. I was the saver. I was the planner. I was the guy who made sure we had an emergency fund while she made sure we had decorative candles for every season. I took a sip of bourbon, felt it burn its way down my throat, and opened a new transfer window. In the to field, I entered Nora's personal account number, the one she kept separate for her personal expenses, which I'd learned over the years meant everything from designer coffee to impulse purchases of succulent plants she'd inevitably kill within 3 weeks. In the amount field, I paused for dramatic effect, even though the only witness was a snoring dog. Then I typed, $1. $1. A single George Washington. For quarters. 10 dimes. The price of a candy bar at the gas station. The amount you'd give to a street performer who was mediocre at best. I stared at that number and felt a surge of satisfaction that probably wasn't entirely healthy, but neither was being treated like an invisible piggy bank, so we were even. But here's where I really committed to the bit. In the memo field, that little space where you're supposed to write boring things like rent or groceries, I typed, buy a veil. Make it symbolic. I read it 3 times, made sure there were no typos because even in petty revenge you need proper grammar, and then I clicked submit transfer. The screen did that little loading circle thing, and for a moment I wondered if I was really going through with this. Then it went through, and I felt like I'd just completed the most satisfying transaction of my entire accounting career. But I wasn't done. Oh no, I was just getting started. See, the thing about being an accountant is that you understand money in ways that normal people don't. You understand access, control, and the beautiful complexity of joint versus individual accounts. And you understand that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's systematic. I pulled up our other joint account, the savings account where we'd been putting money for a future house that Nora wanted to buy in the suburbs even though we already had a perfectly good house. Balance, $28,392.17. I clicked on the account settings, navigated to the management options, and selected Freeze Account. The website asked me if I was sure. Oh, I'm sure, I said out loud to my computer screen. I'm surer than I've been about anything in my entire life. Click. Frozen. Next, the credit card. We had a joint credit card with a $20,000 limit that we used for household expenses. Nora's definition of household expenses included things like spa days and designer handbags, but that was about to become a non-issue. I called the credit card company, because some things you have to do over the phone with an actual human being who sounds bored with your drama, and requested to freeze the account due to potential fraud. Has there been unauthorized activity, sir? The customer service rep asked. His name was Brandon, according to the robotic voice that announced it, and he sounded like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. You could say that, I replied, taking another sip of bourbon. Someone's been making unauthorized purchases on my emotional bank account, and I need to protect my assets. There was a pause. Sir, I meant on the credit card. Oh, right. Yeah, freeze it. I think someone might try to charge $15,000 for a dress, and I'm not about that life. Brandon sounded confused but complied. The card is now frozen, sir. You'll receive a confirmation email. Brandon, you're a hero, I said. Give yourself a raise. I can't do that, sir. Then take an extra cookie from the break room. You've earned it. After I hung up, I moved on to Phase 3 of Operation Financial Independence, Passwords. I changed every single shared password we had. Netflix? Changed to Nora is the worst 2025. Hulu? Changed to Remember My Birthday. Amazon Prime? Changed to One Duel Larvale, with random capitals because even my passwords were getting sarcastic. I was having the time of my life, honestly. Every password change felt like a tiny revolution. But the piece de resistance, the crown jewel of my revenge plan, was the smart lock. 6 months ago, Nora had insisted we install a fancy smart lock on our front door because she'd seen it on some home improvement show and decided we needed to be modern. I'd paid the installer $200 to set it up, and now I was about to get my money's worth. I pulled up the smart lock app on my phone, navigated to user management, and stared at Nora's profile. Her access code was still active, still programmed to let her waltz into our house whenever she pleased. I selected her profile and clicked Remove User. The app asked me to confirm. Confirm. I said out loud, probably louder than necessary. Confirm with extreme prejudice. Her access code disappeared from the system. I then changed the master code to something she'd never guess. 0-3-2-5, which was the date of my birthday that she'd so spectacularly forgotten. The irony was so beautiful, I almost cried. Almost. I saved my tears for Sad Dog movies and the series finale of The Office like a normal person. To really complete the technological lockout, I went into our shared Google Calendar, where Nora kept track of her yoga classes and brunch dates, and removed her editing access. She could view it, but she couldn't change it. Then, in a move that might have been overkill but felt absolutely necessary, I created a new calendar event for today's date that just said the day Leo stopped being a doormat and made it repeat annually. I sat back in my chair, drained the rest of my bourbon, and looked at what I'd accomplished. In the span of about 45 minutes, I'd transferred one symbolic dollar, frozen 2 bank accounts, locked down a credit card, changed a dozen passwords, and turned our house into a fortress that my own wife couldn't access. It was the most productive I'd felt in months. Toby woke up from his nap, stretched, and padded over to me. He put his head on my knee and looked up at me with those big eyes. "You're judging me, aren't you?" I asked him. He licked my hand, which I took as dog language for no judgment here, boss. "You do you." I could still hear Nora downstairs, laughing at something on TV. She had no idea what I'd just done. She had no idea that tomorrow morning, when she tried to buy her overpriced latte with our credit card, it would decline. She had no idea that when she tried to check our savings account, she'd see a big fat, frozen status. And she definitely had no idea that she'd received $1 for her sister's wedding dress. Part of me felt guilty. The part that had taken wedding vows 8 years ago and promised to be supportive and loving through thick and thin. But then I remembered sitting alone in that restaurant booth, watching that balloon bob above an uneaten cake, and the guilt evaporated like morning dew in the Arizona sun. I closed my laptop, turned off the desk lamp, and headed to bed. As I walked past the living room, Nora looked up from her phone. "Coming to bed?" she asked, like we were still living in some normal marriage where people remembered birthdays and didn't treat their spouses like ATMs. "Yep," I said, smiling. "Just finished some important financial planning." She nodded and went back to her phone. I climbed into bed, and for the first time in 3 days, hell, for the first time in months, I slept like a baby. A petty, vindictive baby who'd just changed all the locks, but a baby nonetheless. Even Toby, curled up at the foot of the bed, seemed to sense that something had shifted. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Tomorrow was going to be very, very interesting. I woke up the next morning feeling like I'd just won the lottery, except instead of millions of dollars, I'd won something way better: inner peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've finally stood up for yourself, even if that meant being petty enough to require a clinical diagnosis. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom window. Birds were chirping outside like this was some Disney movie, and Toby was doing that thing where he stares at you until you wake up and feed him. It was shaping up to be a beautiful day. Then I looked at my phone, and all hell had apparently broken loose while I was dreaming about financial independence. 18 missed calls from Nora. 18. That's not a pocket dial situation. That's not a hey, just checking in situation. That's a full-blown emergency-level communication attempt. The call log looked like a timeline of increasing desperation. 3 calls at 7 a.m., 5 more by 8:30, and then a rapid-fire succession of calls between 9 and 9:15 that suggested someone had discovered their credit card didn't work at Starbucks. There were also 7 text messages, each one progressively more capitalized and featuring more exclamation points than the last. Leo, call me now. Why is the card declined? What did you do? This isn't funny. Call me right now. I'm serious. Leo, answer your phone. I smiled at my phone like it was an old friend sharing good news. The satisfaction I felt was probably unhealthy, but so was eating an entire birthday cake alone, and I'd survived that just fine. But wait, there was more. 4 missed calls from Patricia, Nora's mother, who I lovingly referred to as the bank account inspector because the woman had never met a financial boundary she couldn't trample. Patricia had this special talent for making you feel guilty about not spending money you didn't have on things nobody needed. She'd probably been the one encouraging Clara to go for the Vera Wang dress in the first place. And then, the cherry on top of this chaos Sunday, 2 missed calls from Clara herself. Clara, who under normal circumstances wouldn't call me if I was the last person on earth with a working phone. Clara, who usually communicated with me exclusively through Nora, like I was some kind of medieval servant who wasn't important enough for direct contact. The fact that she'd called me directly meant this had escalated from minor inconvenience to full-scale family emergency. I was scrolling through this beautiful disaster of a notification screen, contemplating whether to make coffee before dealing with the inevitable confrontation when my phone rang again. The caller ID showed First National Bank, and I knew exactly who it was. Mr. Russo, the bank manager who I'd been working with for the past 6 years, and who had witnessed my financial journey from optimistic newlywed to guy who eats spreadsheets for breakfast. Good morning, Mr. Russo. I answered, trying to sound professional despite the fact that I was still in bed wearing boxers with little hamburgers printed on them, a gift from Nora back when she still gave a damn about my existence. Leo, Mr. Russo said, and I could hear that barely contained amusement in his voice that people get when they're trying to be professional but also witnessing the best drama of their week. I'm calling because we have a situation at the branch. A situation? I asked innocently, sitting up in bed. Toby perked up his ears, sensing that something entertaining was about to happen. Your wife and her family are currently in my office, he said, and I could picture the scene perfectly. Nora in her designer athleisure were looking indignant. Patricia clutching her pearls like this was a Victorian melodrama, and Clara probably scrolling through Pinterest boards of wedding dresses she couldn't afford. They're claiming that you've lost your mind and are requesting that we perform a psychiatric evaluation to restore their access to your accounts. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that makes dogs look at you with concern. A psychiatric evaluation? That's creative. I'll give them points for originality. Mr. Russo chuckled. They're quite insistent. Mrs. Hayes, your wife, suggested that you might be having some kind of mental breakdown due to work stress. Her mother mentioned something about early onset dementia, even though you're 35. He paused. They also mentioned something about a $1 transfer for a wedding veil. Ah yes, my masterpiece, I said proudly. I take it they received that. They did, and they're not happy about it. Your sister-in-law appears to be stress-eating the complimentary mints from the reception desk. I heard what sounded like Patricia's voice in the background, demanding and shrill. Mr. Russo covered the phone for a moment, then came back. Your mother-in-law is insisting that no sane person would send $1 when asked for $15,000. Tell her she's absolutely right, I said, getting out of bed and padding toward the kitchen. I needed coffee for this. No sane person would ask for $15,000 for a dress 3 days after forgetting their husband's birthday either. But here we are, living in an insane world. There was a beat of silence. Then Mr. Russo spoke in a lower voice, like he was sharing a secret. Between you and me, Leo, I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen people do crazy things with money. But what you did, that's not crazy. That's what we in the business call setting boundaries. Though I can't officially say that while your in-laws are sitting in my office. So what exactly are they asking for? I asked, scooping coffee grounds into the machine. The smell alone was already improving my mood. Full access restored to all accounts, removal of all freezes, and an apology. Your mother-in-law specifically mentioned something about you needing to remember your place in this family. The way he said it made it clear what he thought about that particular demand. My place in this family. I repeated slowly, letting each word sink in. You mean my place is the guy who pays for everything while being treated like furniture? I didn't say that, Mr. Russo replied quickly, but I could hear the smile in his voice. But I'm also not disagreeing with your assessment. I poured myself a cup of coffee, added way too much sugar because today was a celebration, and leaned against the kitchen counter. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Henderson next door watering her garden, completely oblivious to the financial warfare happening in my life. Mr. Russo, I have a question for you as both my bank manager and someone who's witnessed this train wreck of a marriage from a fiscal perspective. I'm listening. If someone treated you like an ATM machine, forgot your birthday, and then asked you for 15 grand 3 days later, what would you do? He didn't even hesitate. I'd tell them the ATM is out of service indefinitely. That's what I thought, I said, grinning. So here's what I want you to tell them. The accounts stay frozen. All of them. If they want to claim I'm mentally unfit, they're welcome to pursue that legally. But something tells me no psychiatrist is going to side with the people who forgot someone's birthday and then immediately asked them for a small fortune. And the credit card? Keep it frozen. Tell them it's climate change. Tell them Mercury is in retrograde. Tell them whatever makes you happy. Mr. Russo actually laughed at that, a real genuine laugh. You know, Leo, I've had this job for over 2 decades, and this is the first time someone's blamed Mercury retrograde for a frozen credit card. I kind of love it. Feel free to use that with other customers, I said. I'm generous like that. What should I tell them about the $1 transfer? He asked. Tell them it's symbolic. Tell them it represents exactly how much consideration they showed for my feelings. Tell them it's modern art and they just don't understand it yet. I took a sip of coffee, savoring both the caffeine and the chaos I'd created. Actually, you know what? Tell them I'm happy to send another $1 if they want to buy matching veils. I'm a generous guy. I could hear muffled arguing in the background, Patricia's voice rising above the others. Mr. Russo covered the phone again, then came back. Your mother-in-law is threatening to report this to the police. For what? Financial self-defense. Please, let her try. I'd love to watch a cop explain that it's not illegal to control your own bank accounts. I finished my coffee and poured another cup. Mr. Russo, keep everything locked down. And thank you for calling me instead of just letting them bully you into giving them access. Leo, he said, his voice sincere now. I've been in banking long enough to recognize when someone's being taken advantage of. Keep those accounts frozen as long as you need to. And for what it's worth, I hope your birthday was at least somewhat enjoyable, even if your family forgot about it. It was memorable, I said. And this morning is turning out pretty great too. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, watching my phone light up with more calls and texts. Each notification was like a little victory, proof that my symbolic dollar had hit its target perfectly. Toby sat next to me, and I gave him a piece of bacon from my breakfast. You know what, buddy? I said to him. Today's going to be a good day. I made it exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes into my workday before Nora showed up at my office like a tornado wearing designer yoga pants. I was in the middle of explaining to a client named Gerald why he couldn't write off his jet ski as a business expense. No, Gerald, taking clients for maritime networking sessions, doesn't count. When Rita's head popped over the cubicle wall with an expression that screamed, incoming missile alert. Leo, she whispered urgently. Your wife just walked past reception, and she looks like she's about to commit a felony. I barely had time to process this information before Nora appeared in the entrance to my cubicle. And let me tell you, the woman was radiating the kind of fury that makes nuclear reactors look stable. Her face was flushed, her perfectly highlighted hair was slightly disheveled, which for Nora was basically the equivalent of showing up naked. And she was gripping her phone so hard I thought the screen might shatter. Gerald, I'm going to have to call you back, I said into my phone, not taking my eyes off my wife. Something just came up that's going to require my immediate attention. Is it about the jet ski? Gerald asked hopefully. No, Gerald, you still can't ride off the jet ski. Goodbye. I hung up and leaned back in my office chair, trying to look casual even though my heart was doing that thing where it beats faster than a hummingbird on espresso. Hey, honey, didn't expect to see you here. Did you want to grab lunch or something? The look she gave me could have curdled milk at 50 paces. Don't you hey honey me, Leo. We need to talk. Now. I glanced around the office. Several of my co-workers had suddenly become very interested in our conversation, pretending to work while their ears were practically growing antennae. Rita wasn't even pretending. She was just straight up watching like this was her favorite reality show. Even Janet from HR had paused her eternal consumption of yogurt to observe the drama. "You want to do this here?" I asked. "At my workplace? Where I have to maintain some semblance of professional dignity." "You want to talk about dignity?" Nora's voice went up an octave, which was never a good sign. "You froze our accounts, Leo. You changed all the passwords. The smart lock won't let me into my own house. Technically, it's our house," I corrected, because apparently I had a death wish. "And technically, they're our accounts, which means I have every right to manage them as I see fit." Her jaw clenched so hard I worried about her dental work. "How dare you embarrass me and my family like this?" I stood up, mostly because sitting down during a confrontation made me feel like I was at a disadvantage, and also because I wanted to be eye level when I delivered what I'd been rehearsing in my head all morning. "Embarrass you? Nora, I sent you money. You just didn't read the fine print. You sent $1. She was practically hissing now, trying to keep her voice down, but failing spectacularly. $1? Yes. I nodded calmly, like we were discussing something completely reasonable, like the weather or the best brand of paper towels. "That's called symbolic contribution. It's very trendy right now. I read about it on the internet." "Symbolic contribution?" she repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Are you kidding me right now? Do I look like I'm kidding?" I asked, gesturing to my face. "This is my serious face. This is the face of a man who's done being treated like a walking wallet." Nora threw her hands up in exasperation, nearly hitting the wall of my cubicle. "This is insane. Clara's wedding is in 2 weeks. "Oh, it's in 2 weeks," I said, feigning surprise. "Wow, that's coming up fast. You know what else came up? My birthday. 3 days ago. Remember that? The party at Salvatore's that literally nobody attended?" She had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but she recovered quickly. "We can talk about that later. Right now." "No," I interrupted, feeling 8 years of suppressed frustration bubbling to the surface like a shaken soda can. "We're going to talk about it right now. I sat in that restaurant for 2 hours, Nora. 2 hours. Alone. With a cake that said Happy Birthday, Legend, and a balloon that made me look like the world's saddest party planner. Where were you?" "I forgot, okay?" she snapped. "I had a busy day, and it slipped my mind. I'm sorry. You forgot." I let those words hang in the air for a moment. "You forgot your husband's 35th birthday, but you remembered to ask me for $15,000 for your sister's dress exactly 3 days later. That's some selective memory you've got there." Rita made a noise that sounded suspiciously like she was choking back laughter. Nora shot her a death glare before turning back to me. "This isn't about your birthday." "Of course it's about my birthday," I said, my voice getting louder despite my best efforts to stay calm. "It's about the fact that I've spent 8 years being the responsible one, the one who pays for everything, the one who makes sure we have savings and emergency funds and a future. And what do I get in return? I get forgotten. I get treated like furniture. I get hit up for cash like I'm some kind of mobile banking app. That's not fair," she protested, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "You know what's not fair?" I leaned forward slightly. "Spending $237 on a birthday party that nobody came to. You know what else isn't fair? Being married to someone who can't even send a text saying sorry, can't make it, but can send a text asking for enough money to buy a used car." Nora's eyes were starting to water, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or strategic tears. She'd always been good at crying on command when it suited her purposes. "You're being cruel," she said quietly. "I'm being honest," I corrected. "There's a difference. And honestly, I'm tired, Nora. I'm tired of being an afterthought. I'm tired of being the guy who everyone forgets about until they need something. I'm tired of being married to someone who values her sister's dress more than her husband's feelings." "Clara is my sister," she said, like that explained everything. "Family helps family." "I agree completely," I said, crossing my arms. "And I've been helping your family for years. I paid for Clara's engagement party. $3,000. I contributed to the venue deposit, $5,000. I'm covering the rehearsal dinner because Brett's parents are apparently broke despite driving a Tesla. Do you know how much I've spent on Clara's wedding so far? That's different. It's $13,000, Nora. $13,000 for a wedding that isn't even mine. And now you want another 15 grand for a dress. I shook my head. The ATM is closed. Permanently. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara slightly. What do you want from me, Leo? You want me to grovel? You want me to say I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry I forgot your birthday. I'm sorry I asked you for money. Is that what you want to hear? What I want, I said slowly, deliberately, is for you to understand that I'm not just a bank account with legs. I'm a person who deserves to be remembered and valued and treated like he matters. You do matter. Then prove it, I challenged. Tell me one thing about my birthday party. Just one. What restaurant was it at? What time was it supposed to start? What did the cake say? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her silence was louder than any answer could have been. That's what I thought, I said, sitting back down in my chair. I suddenly felt exhausted, like I'd run a marathon while carrying a refrigerator. Look, Nora, I'm not trying to hurt you, but I'm also not going to keep lighting myself on fire to keep everyone else warm. So what are you saying? She asked, her voice small. You're just going to leave Clara without a dress? You're going to ruin her wedding. I'm saying she can have the dollar I sent her, I replied. She can use it to buy a veil at the dollar store. Or she can get creative. YouTube has thousands of DIY wedding tutorials. It's very empowering, I hear. Nora stared at me like I'd just told her the earth was flat and birds weren't real. You're serious. As a heart attack, I confirmed. As a tax audit. As whatever metaphor you need to understand that I'm done being everyone's personal ATM. Clara is going to be devastated, she said, trying a different tactic. This is her dream wedding, Leo. Her dream. You know what my dream was. I shot back. Having my wife show up to my birthday party. Dreams don't always come true, Nora. That's life. She stood there for another moment, probably trying to figure out if there was any angle she could work, any guilt she could leverage. When she realized I wasn't budging, her expression hardened. Fine, she said coldly. If that's how you want to play this, then fine. But don't think this is over, Leo. Not even close. I'm counting on it not being over, I said. Because we need to have some serious conversations about this marriage. Starting with whether we still have one. Her eyes widened. Are you threatening me with divorce? I'm not threatening anything, I said calmly. I'm just stating facts. We're married, but we're not really together, are we? You forgot my birthday. I forgot to keep enabling your family's spending habits. Seems like we're both forgetting important things. Nora's face went through about 17 different emotions in 5 seconds. Anger, hurt, disbelief, more anger, and finally landing on cold determination. You're going to regret this, she said quietly. When you come to your senses, you're going to realize what a huge mistake you've made. Maybe, I acknowledged. But right now, the only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. She turned to leave, then paused at the entrance to my cubicle. By the way, she said without turning around, I called a lawyer this morning. Just thought you should know. Good, I replied. Make sure they take payment plans. Because you're not getting another dime from me without a court order. She left without another word, her heels clicking angrily against the office floor as she stormed toward the exit. The second she was out of sight, the entire office erupted in barely suppressed whispers. Rita immediately popped her head over the wall again, her eyes wide with excitement. Leo, she said in an odd voice. That was the most badass thing I've ever seen in this office, and I once watched Ted from accounting tell the CEO that his quarterly projections were optimistic fiction. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath, feeling like I'd just survived a natural disaster. Rita, I think I need a drink. It's 11:30 in the morning. I stand by my statement. The silence that followed the family intervention dinner was honestly kind of shocking. I'd expected World War III, complete with angry phone calls, threatening texts, and maybe even a strongly worded email from Patricia with excessive use of the exclamation point key. But instead, nothing. Radio silence. Complete and total communication blackout. Day 1 after the intervention, I woke up and checked my phone like I was expecting a natural disaster alert. 0 notifications from the in-laws. 0 messages from Nora. Even my group chat with my college buddies, the one where Jake occasionally sent memes at 3 a.m., was dead quiet. It was like I'd entered some kind of alternate dimension where phones existed, but nobody used them to harass me about money. This is weird, right? I asked Toby over breakfast. He was crunching his kibble, completely unbothered by the social ramifications of my actions. Like, suspiciously weird. The calm before the storm kind of weird. He looked at me with those patient dog eyes that said, "Dude, you're overthinking this. Just enjoy the peace." So I did. I went to work, came home, made dinner for one, and discovered something absolutely revolutionary. Life without constant drama was actually pretty damn peaceful. That first week, I cooked actual meals instead of eating takeout while standing over the sink like some kind of depressed bachelor from a rom-com. I made stir-fry on Tuesday, attempted pasta carbonara on Wednesday. It was mediocre but edible, and on Thursday, I went full domestic god and roasted a whole chicken. A whole chicken. For myself. And it was delicious. I started watching TV shows I actually wanted to watch instead of whatever home renovation program Nora insisted on streaming. I binged an entire sci-fi series about space pirates that she would have hated because it's too nerdy, and why are they always in space? Because they're space pirates, Nora. That's literally the premise. I watched it in my boxers with my feet on the coffee table. The expensive coffee table that I was previously forbidden from putting my feet on because it was real wood and not a footstool. Turns out it made an excellent footstool. Toby became the king of the couch, which was another previously forbidden activity. Nora had always insisted that dogs belonged on the floor because furniture is for humans. But you know what? Toby had been more loyal to me in 5 years than most humans had been in my entire life. So if he wanted to sprawl across the sectional like a furry emperor, he'd earned that right. We watched Space Pirates together, and I swear he was following the plot better than I was. By week 2, I started noticing physical changes. I looked in the bathroom mirror one morning while brushing my teeth and realized I looked different, lighter somehow, less like a guy who was carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations and more like an actual human person with his own life. The bags under my eyes were smaller. My shoulders weren't permanently hunched like I was expecting an anvil to drop on my head at any moment. Even my neighbors noticed. Mrs. Henderson, the 70-something lady next door who spent most of her time gardening and occasionally asking me to help her move heavy pots, stopped me while I was getting my mail. "Leo," she said, squinting at me over her bifocals, "you look younger. What are you doing differently?" "Divorce lighting," I told her without missing a beat. "It's like ring light for your soul, but legal and way cheaper than Botox." She laughed so hard she nearly dropped her watering can. "Divorce lighting? Oh honey, I'm going to use that. That's wonderful." Then she got serious for a moment, putting her hand on my arm with that grandmotherly wisdom that comes from living through multiple decades of human nonsense. "You know, my second husband forgot my birthday 3 years in a row. I divorced him and married my third husband, who never forgot a single one until he died 20 years later. Sometimes you have to close one door to find the one that actually opens." "That's beautiful, Mrs. Henderson," I said, genuinely touched. "Also, your lawn looks like hell," she added. "When you're done with your emotional journey, maybe trim those hedges." See, this was the kind of honest communication I'd been missing. No manipulation, no guilt trips, just straight talk about hedge maintenance and life advice. I actually trimmed those hedges that afternoon, and it felt therapeutic. Every snip of the shears was like cutting away another expectation I'd been carrying. Snip, there goes the obligation to fund everyone's dreams. Snip, goodbye to being treated like furniture. Snip, farewell to birthday parties nobody attends. My coworker Rita had become my unofficial therapist during lunch breaks. We'd sit in the break room, and she'd listen to my daily updates like they were episodes of her favorite TV show. "Any word from the in-laws?" she'd ask, unwrapping her sandwich with the enthusiasm of someone settling in for quality entertainment. "Not a single text," I'd report. "It's been 12 days. I'm starting to think they've actually given up." "Don't count on it," Rita warned, pointing at me with a carrot stick. In my experience, silence from angry family members is like silence from a toddler. It either means they're planning something or they've already done something terrible and they're waiting for you to notice. She wasn't wrong to be suspicious, but honestly, I was enjoying the peace too much to care. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I joined a gym. Well, I bought a membership and went twice, which is basically joining a gym in spirit. I reorganized my entire closet and discovered clothes I'd forgotten I owned. I found a shirt from college that still fit, which felt like a personal victory against aging and metabolism. But here's the thing that surprised me most. I started journaling. Not because I suddenly became some kind of poet who needed to document his feelings in flowery language. but because my petty thoughts deserve to be archived for historical purposes. Future Leo needed to remember this moment, this feeling of liberation, so that if I ever considered going back to being a doormat, I could read these entries and slap some sense into myself. My first journal entry was simple. Day 1 of freedom. Ate an entire pizza by myself. Didn't share with anyone. Felt amazing. Toby got a slice. He's a good boy. Deep philosophical stuff, really. Thoreau would have been proud. By entry 15, I was getting more creative. Walked past a Vera Wang store today. Thought about going in and asking how much veils cost. Decided against it because I didn't want to waste their time. Also, I might have laughed maniacally in the middle of the store, and that seems like the kind of thing that gets you escorted out by security. Entry 23. Made chicken marsala tonight. It was actually pretty good. Watched 3 episodes of Space Pirates. Toby fell asleep on my lap. This is what happiness feels like. Note to self. Remember this when the guilt texts eventually start. My evenings developed a routine that was gloriously, beautifully boring. I'd come home from work, take Toby for a walk around the neighborhood, cook something reasonably healthy, and then spend the rest of the night doing whatever I wanted. Sometimes I'd read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. Sometimes I'd play video games that Nora always said were a waste of time, but were actually incredibly relaxing. Sometimes I'd just sit on the porch with a beer and watch the sunset like some kind of philosophical cowboy contemplating the meaning of life. The house felt different too. Without the constant tension of walking on eggshells around Nora's moods, the place actually felt like home instead of like a museum where I was a reluctant visitor who might break something expensive. I moved furniture around, slightly rebellious but deeply satisfying. I put that ugly vase Patricia had given us as a wedding gift in the back of a closet where it belonged. I hung up a poster of my favorite band that Nora had always vetoed because it didn't match the aesthetic. Screw the aesthetic. My house, my poster, my rules. My buddy Jake finally broke his silence in week 3 with a text that said, "Dude, are you alive?" Instagram says Nora is going through changes, which is divorced woman speak, for my husband finally grew a spine. I texted back, alive and thriving, living my best life. Currently eating ice cream directly from the container while wearing socks with sandals. Living dangerously. Jake, you absolute madman. Socks with sandals? What's next? Cargo shorts. Me. Don't tempt me. I'm feeling rebellious enough to bring back the cargo short. Jake, I'm proud of you, man. Seriously, you should have done this years ago. He wasn't wrong. I should have set boundaries years ago. Should have stood up for myself the first time I felt taken for granted. But better late than never, right? Better to be a 35-year-old man learning self-respect than a 50-year-old man still being treated like an ATM with feelings. The thing about silence, though, is that it can be deceptive. It can make you think the storm has passed when really it's just gathering strength. But for those 3 weeks, I didn't care about the potential storm. I was too busy enjoying the sunshine, eating pizza without judgment, and letting my dog sleep on furniture that cost more than most people's monthly rent. I wrote in my journal that night, Day 21 of freedom. Still no contact from the in-laws. Starting to think they're regrouping. Don't care. Made excellent tacos tonight. Toby agrees they were excellent. We're living our best life. If this is rock bottom is actually pretty comfortable. Little did I know, the silence was about to break. But for that moment, sitting on my couch with my dog and my tacos and my complete lack of family drama, I was the happiest I'd been in years. And no amount of impending chaos could take that away from me. 3 weeks into my newfound freedom, I received what might be the most unexpected invitation of my entire life. Mr. Russo, my bank manager, invited me to a company barbecue. Not as a customer, not as a business obligation, but as what he called an honorary guest and staff legend. The email arrived on a Friday afternoon while I was knee-deep in tax forms for a client who thought creative accounting meant basically committing fraud, but with personality. Subject line, you're invited. First National Bank Annual Summer Barbecue, featuring our favorite financial revolutionary. I had to read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from too much exposure to Excel spreadsheets. The email explained that my $1 veil transfer had become legendary among the bank staff. Apparently, word had spread from Mr. Russo to the tellers, from the tellers to the loan officers, and from the loan officers to pretty much everyone who worked at First National Bank. I'd become folklore. I was the guy who'd stood up to his demanding family with the world's most symbolic dollar, and somehow, that made me a hero in the banking world. The staff would love to meet you, Mr. Russo wrote. We've been calling you the dollar bill kid around the office. Janet from accounting made a cake. Please come. There will be burgers. I showed the email to Toby, who was lying on the couch in his usual spot, because yes, he still owned the furniture and I had no regrets about it. Buddy, I've been invited to a bank barbecue. A bank barbecue. People who handle money all day want to have hamburgers with me because I sent my sister-in-law $1. This is either the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me or the greatest thing. I can't decide which. Toby yawned, which I took as his blessing to attend. Saturday rolled around, and I found myself driving to Riverside Park where First National Bank was hosting their annual employee appreciation event. I debated what to wear to a bank barbecue. Business casual felt too formal, but showing up in cargo shorts felt like I was trying too hard to embrace my new rebellious lifestyle. I settled on jeans and a polo shirt, the universal uniform of, I'm trying but not that hard. The park was already buzzing with activity when I arrived. There were kids running around with face paint, a bouncy castle that seemed structurally questionable, and several grills smoking away with the promise of meat cooked by people who probably didn't grill very often but were enthusiastic about it. I spotted Mr. Russo near the main pavilion, flipping burgers with the concentration of a man performing surgery. Leo, he called out when he saw me, waving a spatula like it was a royal scepter. You made it. Everyone, this is him. This is the dollar bill kid. I'm not going to lie, being announced like I was some kind of celebrity at a bank barbecue was surreal. Several people actually applauded. A woman in her 30s wearing a First National Bank, Your Financial Future t-shirt came up and shook my hand enthusiastically. I'm Jennifer from the loan department. Your story has been circulating for weeks. You're basically a legend. I sent $1. I said, still processing the applause. That's a pretty low bar for legendary status. You don't understand, Jennifer said, her eyes sparkling with the kind of excitement usually reserved for celebrity sightings or really good sales. We deal with entitled people all day, every day. People who think rules don't apply to them. People who demand special treatment. People who try to use family emergencies as leverage for better interest rates. And then you came along and just drew a line in the sand. With $1. It was beautiful. Mr. Russo abandoned his grill duties to join us, handing the spatula to a younger guy who looked terrified to be in charge of the burgers. Leo, you have to understand something. In banking, we see a lot of financial abuse. We see people being taken advantage of by family members, significant others, business partners who are basically parasites. But we can't say anything because of privacy and professionalism. So when you did what you did, he grinned. It was cathartic. For all of us. Plus, added a guy named Marcus who worked as a teller. The note you included, by a veil. Make it symbolic, that was chef's kiss. He actually made the chef's kiss gesture, fingers to lips and everything. We've been using it around the office. Marcus, can you help me with this deposit? Sure, make it symbolic. I couldn't help but laugh. This was absurd. This was ridiculous. This was also the most validation I'd received from anyone in months, and it felt amazing. They'd actually prepared for my arrival. Jennifer led me to a table near the main pavilion where they'd set up what could only be described as a dollar bill kid shrine. There was a printout of a $1 bill with my face poorly photoshopped onto George Washington's body. Someone had made a banner that said, Financial Revenge Expert, in glitter letters. And there, hanging on a small clothing rack like it was merchandise at a concert, was an apron. A beautiful, ridiculous, perfect apron. It was forest green with white lettering that declared, Financial Revenge Expert, First National Bank honorary title. Below that, in smaller letters, specializing in symbolic transfers. We had it made custom, Mr. Russo said proudly, handing it to me. You're officially an honorary member of the First National Bank staff. This comes with exactly 0 benefits, but unlimited respect. I put on the apron, feeling like I'd just been knighted by the banking equivalent of royalty. This is the greatest thing I've ever received, I said honestly. Better than my wedding gifts. Better than my birthday presents. Better than. I stopped myself, remembering that nobody had actually given me birthday presents this year, but the point stood. Over burgers, which were slightly burnt but tasted like victory, I ended up telling my story to what felt like half the bank staff. They gathered around the picnic table like I was a campfire storyteller, hanging on every detail about the forgotten birthday, the $15,000 dress request, and the glorious moment I'd transferred exactly $1. "What I don't understand," said a woman named Patricia. Not my mother-in-law Patricia, thank God, but a nice Patricia who worked in customer service, "is how they thought they could just skip your birthday and then ask for that much money. The audacity alone is worth studying." "Right," I said, gesturing with my burger. "Like, the math doesn't math. Zero birthday acknowledgement plus $15,000 request does not equal a happy husband. Even I can do that equation, and I'm an accountant who once accidentally listed a client's dog as a dependent." The crowd erupted in laughter. Marcus nearly choked on his hot dog. "So what happened after you sent the dollar?" asked a younger guy named Tyler, who looked fresh out of college. "Did they call you? Email? Send a strongly worded letter?" "Oh, they showed up at my office," I said. My wife stormed in like a tornado in designer activewear. She demanded to know how I could embarrass her family. I told her I didn't embarrass anyone. I just finally stopped being embarrassed of myself. More applause. These people were way too invested in my personal drama, but honestly, I was here for it. Mr. Russo sat down next to me with his own burger and a beer. "So, Leo, serious question. What's next for you? You've frozen the accounts, changed the locks, sent the symbolic dollar. Where do you go from here?" I thought about it for a moment, watching kids play on the bouncy castle, listening to the sounds of a lazy Saturday afternoon. Honestly, I'm just focusing on peace right now. Peace and maybe throwing a birthday party where people actually show up. "You know what?" Mr. Russo said, raising his beer. "We should celebrate your birthday. Right here, right now. Unofficial redo birthday party." Before I could protest, someone was already bringing out a cake, the one Janet from accounting had apparently made. It was a simple sheet cake with white frosting and blue letters that said, "Happy belated birthday, legend." They'd even included a single candle in the shape of a $sign. The entire bank staff sang happy birthday to me in the middle of a public park, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I got a little choked up. Not because the singing was particularly good. Marcus was tone deaf and Tyler forgot half the words. But because these strangers, these people who knew me only as that guy who sent $1, cared more about my birthday than my actual family had. I blew out the $sign candle and made a wish. Not for revenge, not for justice. Not even for Nora to suddenly realize what she'd lost. I wish for more days like this. More moments where I felt valued, respected, and celebrated. More experiences where I was treated like a person instead of a bank account. "Speech," someone yelled, and others picked up the chant. "Speech, speech." I stood up, still wearing my financial revenge expert apron, and raised my beer. Okay. I just want to say that 3 weeks ago, I sat alone in a restaurant on my birthday with a cake nobody helped me eat. Today, I'm at a park with people who made me a cake and actually sang to me. The math is pretty clear on which situation is better. I paused for effect. Also, this burger is way better than the food at Salvatore's, and I didn't have to pay $237 for it. So that's a win. Everyone cheered. Mr. Russo clapped me on the back so hard I nearly dropped my beer. As the afternoon wore on and the sun started to set over Riverside Park, I found myself thinking about how weird life can be. A month ago, I was a guy who felt invisible, forgotten, taken for granted. Now I was wearing an apron declaring me a financial revenge expert and eating cake with bank employees who thought I was some kind of folk hero. "You know," Mr. Russo said as we watched the cleanup crew start packing up the grills, "in all my years in banking, I've never seen someone handle a difficult situation with such creativity. That dollar transfer was art, Leo. Financial art." "Thanks," I said, genuinely meaning it. You know what the best part is? I sleep better now. No more lying awake wondering why I'm not enough, why nobody remembers my birthday, why I'm always the last priority. I finally put myself first, and it turns out that's not selfish. It's survival. "Damn right," Mr. Russo agreed. "And hey, whenever you need banking services, you come to me. I'll personally make sure your accounts stay frozen until you're ready. Consider it my contribution to your peace of mind." We shook hands, and I felt like I'd made a genuine friend. Not someone who wanted something from me. Not someone who saw me as a resource to be exploited, but someone who respected me for standing up for myself. As I drove home that evening with my new apron on the passenger seat and leftover cake in the back, Toby greeted me at the door with his usual enthusiasm. "Buddy," I told him, "I went to a bank barbecue, and it was actually fun. They made me cake. They sang to me. They gave me an apron. This is what happens when you stop accepting scraps and start demanding respect." He wagged his tail in agreement. Or maybe he just wanted some of the leftover burger I'd saved for him. Either way, it felt like validation. That night, I wrote in my journal, Day 24 of freedom. Attended a bank barbecue. Became a folk hero for sending $1. Received best apron ever. Had actual birthday celebration with people who care. Life is weird but good. Very good. 2 months. 63 days, to be exact. Not that I was counting or anything, but I'm an accountant, so numbers just stick in my brain like gum on a sidewalk. 63 days since the family intervention, since I'd frozen the accounts, since I'd sent that beautiful, symbolic dollar. 63 days of living my best life like I was the star of some indie film about self-discovery, except with more takeout and fewer meaningful shots of me staring pensively at the ocean. Life had settled into a rhythm that I can only describe as aggressively peaceful. I'd redecorated the living room. Well, redecorated is generous. I'd basically just removed all of Nora's throw pillows and replaced them with exactly 0 throw pillows, because who actually needs decorative cushions that serve no functional purpose? I'd also bought a massive TV, the kind that Nora would have vetoed immediately because it was too big and ruins the aesthetic of the room. The aesthetic of my room was now guy who enjoys watching sports on a screen the size of a small car, and I was completely fine with that. Work was going well. I'd gotten a promotion to senior accountant, which came with a modest raise and slightly better health insurance. Rita had joked that my newfound confidence was probably why they'd promoted me. "You're walking around here like you own the place," she'd said. "It's working for you. Keep it up." I'd taken her advice and started speaking up more in meetings, offering opinions instead of just nodding along like a bobblehead with anxiety. Even my social life had improved. Jake and I had started a weekly poker night with some other guys from college. Nothing fancy, just beer, chips, and the kind of trash talk that makes you feel like you're 22 again instead of pushing 40. Last week, I'd won $73 and bragging rights for an entire month. It was the most fun I'd had in years that didn't involve passive-aggressively freezing bank accounts. Toby was thriving too. I'd started taking him to this dog park across town where he'd made friends with a golden retriever named Biscuit and a neurotic poodle named Chairman Meow. Yes, a dog named Chairman Meow, because the owner had a sense of humor. Watching Toby play with other dogs while I chatted with their owners about normal things like weather and the best brand of dog food felt like the most mundane, wonderful thing in the world. Nobody asked me for money. Nobody forgot my birthday. Nobody demanded $15,000 for designer dresses. I'd even started dating. Well, dating was a strong word. I'd gone on exactly 2 coffee dates with a woman named Michelle who worked at the library. Nothing serious, just casual conversations about books and life and how her ex-husband had tried to convince her that his gaming PC was a household necessity worth $3,000. We bonded over stories of financial audacity. It felt nice to talk to someone who understood that setting boundaries wasn't cruel, it was necessary. So when my phone rang on a random Tuesday evening in late September and Nora's name popped up on the screen, I stared at it like it was a bomb that might explode if I answered. I was in the middle of making spaghetti, from scratch, because I'd become that person who watches cooking videos on YouTube and thinks I can do that. And Toby was sitting nearby, hoping I'd drop some ground beef. Should I answer it? I asked Toby, holding my phone like it might bite me. He tilted his head, considering the question with all the wisdom of a 5-year-old dog who once ate an entire stick of butter and lived to tell the tale. The phone kept ringing. Against my better judgment, or maybe because I was curious about what disaster had finally prompted her to break 2 months of silence, I answered. Leo, Nora's voice came through, and it was different. Softer, less demanding, almost hesitant, which was not a tone I'd ever associated with my soon-to-be ex-wife. Hi. Thanks for answering. Nora, I replied, putting down my wooden spoon and turning off the stove because this conversation felt like it required my full attention. This is unexpected. I figured you'd communicate exclusively through lawyers at this point. Yeah, well, she said, and I could hear her taking a breath like she was preparing for something difficult. I needed to call you directly. Something happened. My first thought was that someone had died, because that's usually what something happened means when estranged family members call you. My second thought was that they'd somehow found a way to access the frozen accounts, which would be impressive but also illegal. My third thought was interrupted by Nora actually speaking. Clara postponed the wedding, she said quietly. I processed this information for approximately 3 seconds before responding. Was it the dress? I asked, unable to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Let me guess, Vera Wong doesn't accept installment plans. Or maybe they require actual money instead of hopes and dreams. There was silence on the other end, the kind of silence that happens when someone realizes you're not going to be sympathetic to their problems. Then, unexpectedly, Nora laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a sarcastic laugh, but an actual genuine laugh that sounded like the woman I'd married 8 years ago before everything went sideways. Okay, I deserved that, she admitted. But no, it wasn't the dress. It was Brett. Let me guess, I said, leaning against the kitchen counter. His cryptocurrency empire turned out to be a house of cards built on wishful thinking and Reddit threads. Something like that, Nora said. Turns out he's been lying about a lot of things. His job, his finances, his parents' rough patch, that somehow included Bahamas vacations. Clara found out he'd been using her credit cards to fund his investments. Yikes, I said, and I actually meant it. Whatever issues I had with Clara and her wedding demands, nobody deserved to be financially manipulated by their partner. I knew that feeling all too well. That's rough. I'm sorry she's going through that. Are you though? Nora asked, but not in an accusatory way. More like she was genuinely curious. Yeah, actually, I replied honestly. Look, Clara asking me for 15 grand was ridiculous, but Brett lying to her and stealing from her? That's a whole different level of wrong. Nobody deserves that. More silence. I could hear background noise on her end. Maybe traffic. Maybe just the sound of her processing emotions. When she spoke again, her voice was even softer. We might have overreacted, she said carefully. About the whole money thing. The dollar. The frozen accounts. All of it. I had to sit down for this. I pulled out a kitchen chair and sat, staring at the half-cooked spaghetti on the stove. Might have overreacted? I repeated slowly. Nora, you literally tried to have me declared mentally unfit so you could access bank accounts to fund a wedding dress that cost more than most people's cars. I know, she said, and she actually sounded apologetic. I know, and you were right to cut us off. I can see that now. After watching what Brett did to Clara, after seeing how she trusted him and he just used her, I guess I understand why you did what you did. You guess? I said, feeling that familiar frustration bubbling up. Nora, I sat alone in a restaurant on my birthday. Alone. With a cake that nobody ate and calls that nobody answered. And 3 days later, you asked me for $15,000 like I was a mobile banking app. This wasn't me overreacting. This was me finally reacting appropriately. You were always the funny one, she said suddenly, and there was something in her voice, nostalgia maybe, or regret, or some emotion I couldn't quite identify over the phone. That comment hit me wrong. Not angry wrong, but tired wrong. The kind of wrong that comes from years of being misunderstood. No, Nora, I said firmly. I was always the funding one. There's a difference. I heard her inhale sharply, like I'd slapped her through the phone. Good. Maybe she needed to hear it that bluntly. I wasn't calling to ask for anything, she said after a moment. I just thought you should know about Clara. And that I, might have been unfair to you. Might have been, I repeated again. That's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Fine. Was unfair. Definitely was unfair. Is that what you want to hear? What I wanted to hear was happy birthday 2 months ago, I said. What I wanted was for my wife to show up to a party I planned. What I wanted was to be treated like I mattered for reasons other than my bank account balance. But we don't always get what we want, do we? Nora was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry I forgot your birthday, Leo. I'm sorry I took you for granted. I'm sorry about a lot of things. Yeah, well, I said, standing up and walking to the window. Outside, Mrs. Henderson was watering her garden again. Life just kept going, regardless of phone calls and apologies. Sorry doesn't unfreeze bank accounts. Sorry doesn't unfuck 8 years of feeling invisible. Sorry is just a word people say when they finally realize they pushed someone too far. So that's it, she asked. We're just done? 8 years of marriage, and we're just over. I thought about that question. I thought about the lonely birthday, the symbolic dollar, the bank barbecue where strangers celebrated me more than my own family ever had. I thought about Michelle the librarian and poker nights with Jake and Toby sleeping on furniture he wasn't supposed to be on. I thought about the person I'd become in the last 2 months. Someone who actually liked himself, someone who didn't apologize for having boundaries. Yeah, I said finally. I think we are. Not because I'm angry anymore, but because I'm finally happy. And I'm not giving that up to go back to being someone's ATM. I understand, Nora said quietly. For what it's worth, I hope you stay happy. Thanks, I said, meaning it. And I hope Clara figures things out. Tell her that if she needs help finding a good lawyer to go after Brett, I know a few. Nobody deserves to be used like that. Leo, Nora said before I could hang up. Yeah. The dollar thing. The veil. It was actually kind of brilliant. In a petty, devastating way. I smiled despite myself. Yeah, it was. Take care of yourself, Nora. I hung up before she could respond, placed my phone on the counter, and went back to making spaghetti. Toby looked at me expectantly, probably wondering if the drama was affecting his dinner schedule. It's over, buddy, I told him, stirring the sauce. Really, actually over. And you know what? It feels good. He barked once, which I chose to interpret as agreement. That night, I wrote in my journal, Day 63 of freedom. Nora called. Clara's wedding is off. Brett turned out to be exactly the disaster I predicted. Nora almost apologized. I hung up feeling lighter. Made excellent spaghetti. Life is good. Really good. 1 year. 365 days since the birthday party that nobody attended. Since the symbolic dollar that became legend. Since I discovered that freezing bank accounts was way more satisfying than couples therapy. October 25th rolled around again, and this time, I was determined to do things differently. No grand gestures, no fancy restaurants, no expectations that would inevitably lead to disappointment. Just a simple backyard barbecue with people who actually gave a damn about my existence. I'd spent the morning preparing my backyard like I was hosting a casual cooking show called Middle-Aged Men Who've Discovered Self-Respect. I'd bought a new grill. Nothing fancy, just a solid Weber that could handle burgers and steaks without making me feel like I was compensating for anything. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, and with it came a sense of closure that no amount of therapy could have provided. Nora got the fancy coffee maker and half the throw pillows. I got the house, my sanity, and full control of my finances. Best trade deal in history. The guest list was small but mighty. Jake and his girlfriend Amanda, Rita from work and her husband Tom, Mr. Russo from the bank who'd become an actual friend instead of just a professional contact, Michelle the librarian who'd graduated from coffee dates to actual girlfriend status, and Mrs. Henderson from next door who'd promised to bring her famous potato salad and unsolicited life advice. Oh, and Toby, obviously. He was the guest of honor as far as I was concerned. He'd never once forgotten my birthday or asked me for $15,000. By 3 p.m., my backyard looked like an actual party venue instead of a sad monument to loneliness. I'd strung up some lights, the kind you see on Pinterest that Nora would have approved of, except I'd done it for myself this time, not for Instagram aesthetic points. There was a cooler full of beer, a table with chips and dip, and a playlist of classic rock that would have driven Nora insane because it's too loud and not sophisticated enough for entertaining. Jake arrived first, carrying a case of beer and wearing a shirt that said, "I'm here for the emotionally stable friend." He grinned when he saw me. Dude, you've really embraced the divorced dad aesthetic. The grill, the lights, the cargo shorts. You're living the dream. I'm wearing cargo shorts ironically. I protested, even though I was 100% wearing them unironically. They were comfortable and had excellent pocket space. And yes, I am living the dream. The dream where people actually show up to my birthday party. Speaking of which, Amanda said, handing me a wrapped present, "Happy birthday, Leo. We got you something ridiculous because Jake said you'd appreciate the humor." I unwrapped it to find a custom t-shirt that said, "Financial Revenge Expert, EST 2024, with a small dollar bill printed underneath. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped it. This is perfect. I'm wearing this to the bank next time I see Mr. Russo. Rita arrived next with Tom. carrying what appeared to be an entire cake from an actual bakery. "We couldn't let you have another birthday without proper cake," she announced. "This one says, 'Happy Birthday, Legend,' because apparently that's your brand now." "It's my brand, and I'm owning it," I said, accepting the cake. "Thank you. This is already better than last year, and we haven't even started grilling yet." Mr. Russo showed up wearing my financial revenge expert apron from the bank barbecue, claiming he'd had it dry cleaned specifically for this occasion. "I figured if anyone earned the right to wear this today, it's you. But I'm borrowing it for grill duties if you don't mind." "It's all yours," I said. "You've earned honorary apron privileges." Michelle arrived with a bottle of wine and a book she'd picked out specifically for me. Something about a guy who goes on a journey of self-discovery after his life falls apart. "I thought you'd appreciate the parallels," she said, kissing my cheek. "Plus, it's funny and you like funny." "I do like funny," I agreed, pulling her into a hug. "Thank you for being here. For being you. For not asking me to fund anyone's wedding dress purchases." She laughed. "Leo, I work at a library. My idea of a major expense is splurging on hardcover books instead of waiting for the paperback. You're safe with me." Mrs. Henderson was the last to arrive, carrying her legendary potato salad and wearing a t-shirt that said, "I'm with Stupid," with an arrow pointing to her left, even though nobody was standing there. "I made extra," she announced, "because Leo finally has friends who show up, and that deserves extra potato salad." By 4 p.m., my backyard was filled with people who actually wanted to be there. No obligations, no guilt trips, no family members who saw me as a mobile banking service. Just genuine humans who liked me for reasons that had nothing to do with my checking account balance. Jake manned the grill with Mr. Russo, the two of them arguing good-naturedly about the proper temperature for cooking steak, while drinking beer and occasionally flipping burgers. Rita and Amanda were deep in conversation about reality TV shows I'd never heard of. Tom was teaching Toby tricks in exchange for treats, even though Toby already knew all the tricks and was basically scamming him for extra snacks. Mrs. Henderson was holding court near the potato salad, telling Michelle stories about her 3 marriages with the kind of wisdom that only comes from living through multiple decades of relationship drama. I stood there for a moment, beer in hand, just taking it all in. The laughter, the conversation, the smell of grilling meat, the complete absence of family members demanding money for absurd purchases. This was what a birthday party should feel like. This was what life should feel like. "Hey Leo," Jake called out. "Come settle this debate. Should steaks be medium rare, or is Mr. Russo a heathen who wants them well done?" "Medium rare is the only acceptable answer," I called back, walking over to join them. "Anything else is a crime against beef." "Thank you," Jake said, vindicated. "Mr. Russo here wants to murder these beautiful ribeyes." "I like my food cooked," Mr. Russo protested. "Sue me." We argued about steak temperatures like it mattered, like it was the most important debate in the world, and it felt amazing. These were the kinds of stupid, meaningless, perfect conversations that made life worth living. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. We ate too much, drank slightly too much, and laughed way too much. Rita told stories about office drama that made everyone cry laugh. Jake reminisced about college with stories I'd forgotten, including one about me drunkenly trying to explain tax law to a houseplant at 3 a.m. Michelle shared library stories about patrons who returned books with the strangest items used as bookmarks. Highlights included a piece of bacon, a parking ticket, and inexplicably, someone's tax return. Speaking of tax returns, Tom said, refilling his beer, "I heard through the grapevine that your ex-wife's sister ended up calling off her wedding." "That true?" The table went quiet, everyone looking at me with curiosity. Even Toby stopped begging for scraps to pay attention. I took a sip of my beer, smiled, and raised my glass. She wanted $15,000 for a dress. I gave her $1 for closure. The table erupted. Jake spit out his beer. Rita cackled so loud that Mrs. Henderson's dog, 3 houses down, started barking. Mr. Russo actually stood up and slow clapped. Michelle was laughing so hard she was crying, and even Tom, who barely knew the full story, was doubled over. $1. Rita wheezed. "I will never get over the $1. That's the most savage thing I've ever heard." "It was symbolic," I said, still grinning. "Very trendy. I read about it on the internet." "You're a legend," Jake said, raising his own beer. "An actual legend. That shirt we got you isn't a joke. It's a documentary. Mrs. Henderson raised her wine glass. In my day, we called that having a backbone. Good for you, Leo. My second husband forgot my birthday for 3 years, and when I left him, all I gave him was divorce papers and his collection of ugly ties. Your dollar was more creative. We toasted to symbolic gestures, to boundaries, to birthday parties where people actually showed up. We toasted to new beginnings and closed chapters. We toasted to everything and nothing, because that's what you do when you're surrounded by people who genuinely care about you. As the sun set and the string lights came on, casting a warm glow over my backyard, I looked around at this mismatched group of humans who'd chosen to spend their Saturday evening celebrating me. Not because they had to, not because they felt obligated, but because they wanted to. That realization hit me harder than any divorce papers ever could. You good? Michelle asked softly, putting her hand on my arm. Yeah, I said, meaning it completely. I'm really, really good. Later, after everyone had gone home, after the leftovers were packed away, the grill was cleaned, and Toby had passed out in a food coma on the couch, I sat on my back porch with a final beer and reflected on the past year. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic confrontations or public callouts or elaborate schemes. Sometimes revenge is quiet, clean, and paid in exact change, or in my case, $1 exact. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well, surrounding yourself with people who value you, and learning to value yourself enough to walk away from people who don't. I'd learned something important over the past year. You can't buy loyalty. You can't purchase genuine affection or real friendship or actual love. But you can definitely freeze the accounts of people who mistake you for an ATM. You can definitely change the locks on people who take you for granted. And you can definitely send one symbolic dollar to make a point that resonates louder than any argument ever could. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Best birthday party ever. Same time next year. I typed back, absolutely. But you're bringing the potato salad. Mrs. Henderson has retired from potato salad duty. I looked at Toby through the window, snoring on his forbidden couch cushion, living his best life. I thought about the party last year, the lonely table, the uneaten cake, the silence that echoed louder than any noise. I thought about the person I'd been then, desperate for validation, willing to be invisible, treating himself like he didn't matter. And then I thought about the person I was now, confident enough to wear cargo shorts unironically, brave enough to send $1 instead of 15,000, happy enough to throw a party that people actually attended. I raised my beer to the empty backyard, to the memory of that terrible birthday, to the symbolic dollar that changed everything. Happy birthday to me, I said out loud. The legend who learned that self-respect costs exactly $1. And somewhere in the universe, I like to think that dollar was still making people laugh. At my wife's birthday, my wife's mother introduced me to her boss as an unemployed loser and failed husband. Her boss looked at me, smiled, and said to her, "You're fired." You ever have one of those nights where the universe decides to test your patience, pride, and sense of humor all at once? Yeah, that was me, standing dead center in my own living room during what was supposed to be a normal birthday party for my wife, Rachel. There were string lights, too many scented candles, and the faint smell of sangria battling with my dignity for dominance. Everything was going fine until the moment Gloria, my dear mother-in-law, may her ego rest in eternal chaos, grabbed the microphone like she was about to deliver a State of the Union address and introduced me to her boss. Now, I've been insulted before. I've been roasted by traffic cops, baristas, and even toddlers who told me I looked tired in the face. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compared to the words that left Gloria's mouth that night. "This is my son-in-law, Mason," she purred with that fake sweet tone that could strip paint off walls. "He's currently unemployed and not exactly husband of the year material." Boom. Silence. Not polite silence either, the kind that eats oxygen and makes you hyper-aware of your own heartbeat. Even the playlist Rachel made, 3 hours of good vibes only pop, cut off mid-song like Spotify got embarrassed for me. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to me, like I was the evening's entertainment. And in a way, I guess I was. I saw someone in the back take a sip of wine so slow, I swear time slowed with it. My cousin Dan, the only person with less tact than Gloria, muttered, "Damn," under his breath like it was a sports commentary. But the real show hadn't even started yet. Mr. Edward Caldwell, CEO, billionaire in sensible shoes, and the man standing directly in front of me, looked between us with a calm expression that said he'd seen this kind of corporate carnage before. I braced myself for pity or small talk. Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks, turned to Gloria, and said, "Gloria, you're fired." Just like that. Like he was ordering takeout. You could have heard a pin drop, or, in our case, an ice cube hitting the floor, because Rachel's coworker Melissa actually dropped her drink in shock. Gloria blinked, mouth half open, like someone had unplugged her from reality. "Excuse me," she squeaked. Caldwell didn't even flinch. "I don't employ people who humiliate their family for sport," he said, smooth as silk. "Collect your things on Monday." I almost clapped. I mean, how often does life serve you poetic justice with a side of irony? Gloria had just tried to end my social life, and instead, she tanked her own career in front of 30 witnesses and a charcuterie board. For a split second, I thought maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I fell asleep watching some feel-good revenge movie. But no, this was real. My wife, Rachel, still frozen mid-sip of her wine, looked at me with an expression that was half apology, half, "Please don't make a scene." Her coworkers, corporate types with smiles that looked stapled on, were trying to figure out if they should stay or pretend to check their phones. I, meanwhile, was just trying not to grin like the Joker. I took a slow sip of my drink, non-alcoholic beer because, unemployment diet, and said, "Well, that escalated delightfully." Caldwell glanced back at me, the faintest smirk twitching at the corner of his mouth, and nodded. Like he knew. Like we were two soldiers sharing a silent, "You earned this one." Gloria stood there, flustered, turning shades of red previously unseen by science. "Edward, please," she stammered. "I didn't mean, he's just, you said exactly what you meant," he cut in. "And I meant what I said." She froze. The crowd didn't know whether to clap, cry, or hide behind the dessert table. My buddy Chris actually whispered, "Bro, this is better than Netflix," and I couldn't even disagree. Rachel, bless her heart, tried to salvage what was left of the evening. "Everyone, let's just, enjoy the party," she said with that fragile hostess smile women use right before murder becomes a viable option. But you could tell the night was over. The tension in the room was thicker than the frosting on Gloria's store-bought cake. One by one, people started pretending to get emergency phone calls. "Oh shoot, my dog's sick. My babysitter just texted. My Uber's already here." Lies. Every single one. But understandable. No one wants to stay and watch a mother-in-law emotionally combust. Me? I just stood there, basking in the weird glow of karma's spotlight. For the first time in months, I wasn't the guy everyone pitted. I wasn't Mason the unemployed. I was Mason, the man whose mother-in-law got fired at his wife's birthday party. And honestly, that's an upgrade. Gloria, to her credit, tried to recover her dignity. She picked up a plate of bruschetta and said, "Well, at least the food's good," like she hadn't just detonated her own reputation. Then she dropped the plate. It shattered into a million pieces, perfectly matching her career. Rachel muttered, "Oh my God," under her breath and went to grab a broom. I followed her, because I'm a gentleman, and because watching her mother try to explain herself to Caldwell again would have been too satisfying to resist. "You think I'm in trouble for laughing?" I asked quietly. Rachel gave me a glare sharp enough to slice bread. "Don't." "Okay, I won't. But just know I'm dying inside." "Mason." Right. Serious face. "Got it." We cleaned up in silence for a minute, while Gloria hovered nearby, whispering apologies that sounded more like accusations. "I was only trying to help," she said at one point. "By calling me unemployed in front of your boss." I asked, "That's not help, Gloria. That's sabotage with sprinkles." Caldwell, still standing by the door like an avenging angel in loafers, gave her one final look before heading out. "Happy birthday, Rachel," he said kindly. "And Mason, good luck. You'll land on your feet." "Thanks," I said, trying to sound casual even though I was mentally adding him to my list of favorite people on Earth, right below Morgan Freeman and whoever invented Wi-Fi. When he left, the silence returned, heavier this time. Rachel rubbed her temples like she was trying to erase the entire evening from her brain. Gloria turned to me, eyes blazing. "This is your fault," she hissed. I blinked. Really? I was standing here, holding a plate of sliders, And you're the one who decided to go full WWE promo in front of your CEO. She huffed, grabbed her coat, and stormed toward the door. You'll regret this, she snapped. Already do, I muttered. The door slammed, rattling a photo frame off the wall. It was our wedding picture. Fitting. Rachel sighed, sat down on the couch, and finally looked at me. You okay? She asked softly. I shrugged. I think so. Though part of me feels like I just watched a nature documentary called Predator Becomes Prey. She laughed despite herself, which made me feel better. You're impossible, she said. You married impossible, I reminded her. For the first time that night, her smile was real. Later, when the last guest left and the house finally went quiet, I poured myself a glass of whiskey I'd been saving for special occasions. And honestly, watching Karma arrive wearing a tailored suit and firing my mother-in-law at my own party qualified. As I sat there, Rachel resting her head on my shoulder, I realized something. Maybe my life wasn't falling apart. Maybe it was just rearranging itself, like furniture after a storm. Messy now, but better later. I raised my glass toward the door Gloria had stormed out of and whispered, Cheers to new beginnings and unemployment upgrades. Rachel chuckled sleepily. You're terrible. Maybe, I said. But tonight, I'm undefeated. They say bad news travels fast, but whoever came up with that clearly never waited for a Zoom meeting invite that started with, Hey, Mason, could you stay behind for a quick chat? That's corporate code for, we're about to ruin your day and pretend it's personal growth. It was a Tuesday. Of course it was. Every tragedy in my life happens on a Tuesday. My appendix burst on one, my car got towed on one, and now, apparently, I was getting laid off on one. The HR rep's name was Cheryl, which already told me I was doomed. Every Cheryl I've ever met carries at least one pink slip in the emotional range of a tax form. Mason, she began with the fake warmth of a customer service chatbot. We've decided to downsize. I nodded like I'd been waiting for the punchline. Downsize. Okay, so fewer snacks in the break room, or? She gave me that pity look. You know the one. Head tilt, soft eyes, like she's trying to euthanize your spirit gently. No, unfortunately, your role has been eliminated. Eliminated. Like I was a mosquito, right? Of course. Totally understandable, I said. Meanwhile, my inner monologue was screaming, I just built the damn inventory system you're about to keep using without me. But I kept my cool. I signed whatever she shoved across the table and left with a cardboard box filled with career leftovers, a coffee mug that said Boss Energy, a stress ball shaped like a truck, and my pride, barely breathing. Driving home felt like slow death on wheels. I sat in traffic behind a minivan with a baby on board sticker, which I swear was judging me. The radio played Don't Stop Believin', which was either God trolling me or the universe handing out irony like coupons. I pulled into our driveway, parked, and just sat there, staring at the front door like it was a game show door hiding either a loving wife or an emotional ambush. Rachel opened it before I could knock. She had that sixth sense wives get when they know something's off, like when you forget the anniversary or accidentally like your ex's Instagram post from 2016. You're home early, she said, cautious smile. I tried to smile back. Yeah, well, corporate decided to explore new frontiers. Without me. Her face softened instantly. You got laid off? I nodded. Downsized. Streamlined. Made operationally unnecessary. Pick one. She sighed and pulled me into a hug. And for a second, I thought, okay, maybe this won't be that bad. She kissed my cheek. We'll get through this. You're smart, resourceful, and you make a mean lasagna. That's true, I said. If this marriage collapses, it'll be because someone underestimated my pasta game. She laughed, and the tension in my shoulders eased until the doorbell rang. Enter, Gloria, my mother-in-law, the human embodiment of unsolicited advice wrapped in designer perfume. She breezed in like she owned the place, holding a glass casserole dish like it was a trophy. I heard the news, she said, not even waiting for hello. I brought lasagna. Oh, good, I said, because unemployment really works up an appetite. She didn't catch the sarcasm, obviously. Sweetheart, she said to Rachel, why didn't you tell me sooner? I could have brought a salad too. Rachel smiled nervously. Mom, it just happened. Gloria looked at me, her eyes twinkling with that patronizing sympathy only mothers-in-law can weaponize. Oh, Mason dear, she began, and I swear every muscle in my face braced itself. Maybe this is a sign. You should focus on household chores for a while, something you can handle. You ever feel your soul leave your body and take the nearest Uber? That was me. Household chores, I repeated, smiling like an actor in a hostage video. That's a great idea. Maybe I'll start with vacuuming my self-esteem off the carpet. Rachel shot me a look that said, "Don't start," but it was too late. Gloria patted my shoulder like I was a therapy dog. It's okay. Men today just need to adjust. Maybe learn to cook something beyond lasagna. I nodded. Right. Because my only redeeming quality is my ability to melt cheese. Now, I'll give her credit. She did mean well, in the same way a tornado means well when it remodels your neighborhood. She believed she was helping, but every sentence out of her mouth felt like a Yelp review for my life. So what are your plans now? She asked, scooping herself a heroic portion of lasagna. You'll start applying again soon, right? Absolutely, I said. Tomorrow, I'm applying for CEO of NASA. Don't be ridiculous. Fine, SpaceX. I hear they hire fast. Rachel tried to hide her laugh behind a napkin, but Gloria wasn't amused. I'm serious, Mason. You can't just sit around waiting for something to happen. Technically, I said, that's exactly what a job search is. Dinner turned into a slow-motion train wreck. Gloria picked apart everything. My career, my casual posture, even my t-shirt. You know, polos make you look more employable, she said. You should wear them around the house. It keeps you in the mindset. Ah, yes, I said. The business casual couch potato look. Very on trend. Rachel kicked me under the table. Ow, I whispered. Motivation kick, she whispered back. Gloria smiled like she'd just won something. See, Rachel, that's the spirit. Keep him focused. Keep him focused? I wasn't a toddler learning to walk. I'd been working since high school, putting in 12-hour shifts at a logistics firm where the only reward was surviving another quarterly meeting. But in Gloria's world, losing a job meant I'd reverted to caveman status. When she finally left that night, the air in the house felt 10 pounds lighter. Rachel closed the door and groaned. She means well, she said automatically. I looked at her. If she means well, I'd hate to see what happens when she's in a bad mood. She just worries, Rachel added. You know she doesn't think before she speaks. I noticed, I said. She's like a malfunctioning Alexa, loud, confident, and always wrong. Rachel smiled despite herself, then hugged me again. Don't let her get to you. We'll be fine. I know, I said. Besides, I've got a new full-time job now. Oh yeah? Doing what? Surviving, Gloria. Over the next week, I did my best to embrace the unemployed life. Woke up early, made coffee, even worked out once. Okay, half a workout. I reorganized the garage, fixed the squeaky door, and baked bread because apparently that's what you do when capitalism kicks you out. Rachel supported me, though I could feel her stress simmering. She'd walk around talking about bills and savings like a podcast host for anxiety. And then there was Gloria. She started calling every morning like she was my parole officer. Any luck with job applications? Still applying. Maybe you should lower your standards. Great advice, Gloria. That's exactly how you ended up with your second husband. Silence. Then she hung up. Small victories. I applied everywhere, logistics companies, freight firms, even one sketchy place called Hall Heroes, which I'm 90% sure was a front for organized crime. I didn't care. I just needed something. Anything. Because unemployment has stages, and I'd hit stage 3, existential crisis with extra cheese. You start questioning everything. Your career choices, your wardrobe, your cereal preference. I found myself staring at the ceiling one night wondering if I could turn my lasagna recipe into a business. Mason's Meals, comfort food for the unemployed. Tagline, broke, but well fed. Then, one Saturday, Rachel's friend Monica came over for brunch. She's one of those people who always checks in, but mostly to gossip. I heard about the layoff, she said between mimosas. That's awful, but maybe it's a blessing. Maybe it's time to reinvent yourself. As what? I asked. A magician. Make money appear out of nowhere. She laughed too loud and said, You're so funny, Mason, like I was auditioning for open mic night. Gloria, who apparently teleports to wherever attention is, showed up 20 minutes later, uninvited, holding another casserole. I thought you could use company, she said, and constructive criticism. Oh good, I said. I was worried today might go too smoothly. She inspected the house like a landlord on caffeine. You should dust more, she said. Also, why is your resume only one page? Because it's concise, I replied. No, dear, she said sweetly. Because it's unimpressive. Rachel tried to mediate. Mom, please. I'm just saying, Gloria insisted. Men should always have a plan. Mason, what's yours? My plan, I said, is to stay alive until dessert. Don't be flippant, she scolded. I'm being efficient, I replied. But somewhere between sarcasm and lasagna leftovers, I realized something. I wasn't just mad at Gloria. I was scared. Scared I'd peaked at a job I didn't even like. Scared Rachel would start looking at me the way her mom did, like I was a project that needed fixing. So that night, after Gloria left, finally, mercifully, I sat down with my laptop, opened a blank document, and started writing a plan. A real one. Not a corporate buzzword salad, but a list of what I was actually good at. Solving problems, staying calm under pressure, and, yeah, fine, making lasagna that could end wars. I applied to a few startups that night, places where humor wasn't considered a liability. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first domino. Because 3 months later, at a birthday party gone nuclear, that same lasagna-loving, unemployed guy would stand in front of a room full of people, watch Karma deliver a pink slip to his mother-in-law, and think, maybe getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. There's a special kind of fear that creeps into your bones when you realize your mother-in-law has found a reason to visit 3 times in 1 week. Not for birthdays, not for emergencies, just vibes. That was my life now. Me, Rachel, and Gloria, the unholy trinity of tension and casseroles. It started innocently enough. I just wanted to check on you too, she said the first time, waltzing in with her perfume cloud announcing her presence 3 seconds before the doorbell. She brought muffins. I almost forgave her, until she tasted one and said, too dry, but that's not your fault. Some people just don't understand portion ratios. Some people? Lady, that some person was me. The next visit, she brought a folder full of career tips, printed from Google and Comic Sans. I swear to God, the woman curated a PowerPoint presentation for my unemployment. I found these online, she said, flipping through it like she'd just solved climate change. 10 ways to bounce back after a layoff. Number 1, stay positive. Ah, yes, I said. Positivity, that thing that pays the mortgage. Mason, don't be sarcastic, she replied. That's not a skill. It's gotten me this far, I muttered. By week 3, she had her own mug in our kitchen. That was my red flag. Once an in-law has a dedicated mug in your house, you've officially lost sovereignty. It's just until Rachel's project wraps up, Gloria said, plopping her designer handbag on our couch, like she was claiming territory. You know, I can help around here. The last time she helped around here, she reorganized my entire spice cabinet alphabetically. Do you know what it's like to look for paprika and find paprika and pea instead of next to cumin, where it belongs spiritually? It changes a man. Gloria moved in. Unofficially, of course, under the banner of temporary stay. Her suitcase was bigger than my car trunk, and she arrived armed with opinions. Within an hour, she'd criticized our Wi-Fi, our curtains, and the emotional tone of our marriage. You two should talk more, she said at breakfast, buttering toast like a therapist with a vendetta. We talk all the time, I replied. We're talking now. About what? About how you're buttering that toast wrong. Mason, Rachel warned, her tone pure wife code for please don't make me choose between you and her before noon. Gloria had a sixth sense for finding the worst possible time to appear. If I was on a job interview call, boom, she'd walk in behind me asking where we keep the good butter. If I was vacuuming, she'd stand there watching, arms crossed, offering feedback like it was the Olympics. You really should exhale less dramatically, she'd say. Makes you sound defeated. It's called breathing, Gloria. Try shorter breaths. You mean suffocating? If it helps your posture, yes. The woman didn't just criticize, she performed it. Like a Broadway actress starring in How to Make Your Son-in-Law Lose His Mind. Every night at dinner, she'd ask Rachel questions that sounded supportive but were really grenades. Sweetheart, are you sure Mason's okay being home all day? It must be emasculating. Rachel would sigh and say, he's fine, Mom. Then Gloria would turn to me with that fake empathy face. Don't worry, dear, you'll find something soon. Some men just need a little extra motivation. Yeah, I said. I'm motivated to invent time travel so I can stop myself from answering the door 3 weeks ago. I started spending more time in the garage just to escape her. The garage became my sanctuary, my unofficial office, gym, and therapy space. I even started fixing things that didn't need fixing just to look busy. Rachel caught me tightening a bolt on the lawnmower one night and said, "You hate yard work." "Yeah," I said, "but I love freedom." She smirked but didn't argue. Even she was starting to crack. One night, Gloria joined us for movie night. Mistake number one. She spent the entire film commenting like she was the director's commentary track. Why is he running back into the house? That's so unrealistic. Because it's a movie, Gloria. Still, a real man wouldn't do that. You know what's also unrealistic? You being quiet for 2 hours. Rachel threw popcorn at me. Gloria gasped like I'd slapped her with a tortilla. You see, Rachel? This is what happens when men have too much idle time. The sarcasm festers. No, I said, it thrives. But the real chaos began when Gloria decided to help me with my job search. She sat me down at the dining table with her laptop, glasses perched at the edge of her nose like some HR overlord. Okay, she said, fingers poised over the keyboard. Let's fix your resume. What's wrong with it? It lacks sparkle. It's a resume, not a dating profile. Exactly. It needs personality. How about this? Instead of managed logistics coordination, say spearheaded innovative supply strategies. That's just fancy nonsense. Employers love fancy nonsense. Yeah, I noticed. That's why I'm unemployed. Rachel peeked in halfway through and saw me half dead inside while her mother was debating font choices like it was a hostage negotiation. Times New Roman, Gloria said firmly. Classic, dependable. It's also what funeral programs use, I muttered. She ignored me. You should also add a hobbies and interests section. Why? To seem well-rounded. Gloria, no one cares that I like barbecues and true crime podcasts. You'll thank me later. I'll send you a card from prison. The next morning, I woke up to find her emailing my resume to her contacts. I nearly dropped my coffee. Gloria, what are you doing? Networking, she said. That's how people get jobs these days. By having their mother-in-law send unsolicited emails on their behalf. Don't be dramatic. You're literally emailing someone called Brett from Rotary Club. He knows people. He also runs a bowling alley. Networking is networking, she said proudly. You should be thanking me. You're right, I said. Thank you for ruining my professional reputation before breakfast. Rachel tried to stay neutral, but even she started cracking. Mom, she said one afternoon, maybe give Mason some space. Space? Gloria gasped. Why? I'm helping. He doesn't want help. Everyone wants help, not from someone who critiques how they breathe. I was just trying to correct his energy. Mom, fine. Gloria huffed, grabbing her purse. I'll give him space. Maybe he'll finally use it productively. She stormed off to her room. Yes, her room, because apparently she'd decided the guest room was now hers. For 2 glorious hours, there was peace. Rachel and I sat on the couch, silent but happy. Then Gloria reemerged with a PowerPoint on her tablet titled Operation Mason, the rebrand. I almost cried. You made slides? I asked. With animations, she said proudly. I even included a vision statement. Please tell me it's leave Mason alone. It's building a better Mason. I preferred my version. She walked me through her presentation like I was an intern at the world's most unbearable company. Step 1, wardrobe upgrade. You need to look employable even at home. Dress for success. The next morning, I found a stack of collared shirts on my bed. Step 2, morning affirmations. Say them out loud to attract positivity. I'll attract a restraining order if you keep this up. Step 3, stay active. Laziness breeds negativity. That's how I ended up doing forced yoga in the living room while Gloria shouted, breathe through your doubt, like some deranged life coach. But karma, sweet and patient, was already loading her ammunition. Because one afternoon, while Gloria was on one of her long advice calls with a friend, aka gossip disguised as mentorship, she didn't realize her Bluetooth speaker was still connected to her phone. Suddenly, the whole living room echoed her voice. Honestly, Rachel could have done better. Mason's sweet, but he's underwhelming. Like a baked potato. He tries, but he's not steak. Rachel froze mid-step. I slowly turned my head toward the speaker, eyes wide, sipping my coffee like it was popcorn. Mom, Rachel called out, voice sharp. Silence. Then frantic footsteps. Gloria appeared, face pale as uncooked dough. Oh, that wasn't. I didn't mean. You compared me to a potato, Gloria. I was joking. You said I wasn't steak. Well, not in a bad way. What's the good way to say someone's not steak? Rachel's jaw tightened. Mom, this is too much. You've been disrespectful, invasive, and now this. Gloria looked genuinely panicked. Sweetheart, I was just… No, Rachel said, cutting her off. You need to leave. Today. The silence that followed was heavenly. You could hear angels packing Gloria's bags. I stayed quiet, mostly because I didn't want to ruin the magic. She tried one last time. Mason, surely you don't want me to go? Gloria, I said gently. You've contributed so much to our home. Mostly chaos and unsolicited spreadsheets. But I think it's time the universe gets to experience your energy elsewhere. She left that evening, suitcase rolling behind her like a defeated general leaving the battlefield. Rachel slumped onto the couch, groaning. I'm sorry, she said. You shouldn't have to deal with her. Don't apologize, I said. I've learned valuable skills. Like what? Patience. Conflict management. Hiding in the garage. She laughed for a good minute before leaning her head on my shoulder. You're a good man, Mason. I know, I said. Even if I'm just a baked potato. That night, the house felt different, quiet, balanced, like it remembered how to breathe. I poured a drink and toasted to my temporary freedom. To Gloria, I said aloud. May she find peace, preferably far, far away. But deep down, I knew her story wasn't over. People like Gloria don't fade quietly. They regroup, reload, and come back louder. I just didn't realize her next visit would end with fireworks, a crowd, and her career detonating in front of everyone she admired. But for now, I slept like a man who'd survived a hostage situation. There are bad ideas. There are catastrophic ideas. And then there's the kind of idea that wears a nice dress, smiles sweetly, and convinces your wife to say, sure, Mom, let's do that. That's how Rachel's birthday party became Gloria's latest scheme. I was still recovering from her last visit, which ended with me being called a baked potato through a Bluetooth speaker. I thought I'd earned at least 6 months of peace. Nope. Peace lasted roughly 48 hours before Rachel walked into the living room one Sunday morning holding her phone like it was a live grenade. So, Mom called, she said cautiously. I froze mid-sip of coffee. Please tell me she was phoning from Antarctica. She wants to plan my birthday party this year. I blinked. Like, voluntarily? Apparently, she feels bad about what happened. Does she also feel bad about the time she compared me to a Roomba? Rachel smiled despite herself. She said she wants to make it up to both of us. She even offered to handle everything so we don't have to lift a finger. Yeah, because that's never gone wrong before, I muttered. Here's the thing about Gloria, she doesn't plan parties. She plans productions. If Martha Stewart and a Bond villain had a baby, it would be her. Honey, I said, putting my mug down carefully like it might explode. We can't let her do this. You know how she gets. The woman can't even rearrange silverware without turning it into a power struggle. She promised to behave, Rachel said. She said she wants this to be fun and drama-free. I laughed so hard I almost inhaled my coffee. Drama-free? Gloria? That's like saying the ocean's gonna take a weekend off from being wet. Rachel sighed and leaned against the counter, trying to reason with me. She's my mom. She's been trying to fix things since the whole Bluetooth potato incident. By hosting an event with witnesses? That's not an apology, that's a cover-up. Mason, she said, giving me that tone wives use when they're 90% sure you're wrong, but too polite to say it. Let her help. Please. I stared at her. She had that pleading look, half guilt, half love, and I'm weak to that combination. Fine, I said. But if this turns into another, let's roast Mason in front of strangers situation, I'm building a moat around this house. She smiled, kissed me, and said, you'll see. It'll be fine. Those are famous last words in every horror movie ever made. By Tuesday, I knew we were doomed. Gloria showed up with a clipboard the size of a Bible and a face full of purpose. Okay, she said, setting up at our dining table like she was about to launch a space mission. We'll need catering, entertainment, and a theme. A theme? I asked. It's a birthday, not Coachella. Details matter, she said sharply. Rachel deserves something elegant. Something classy. Something that says refined taste. So, not your usual buffet of chaos. I whispered. She ignored me and scribbled something on her list. We'll invite my colleagues too, she added. They'll love to celebrate Rachel. I froze. Wait, your colleagues? What? Networking, Mason. It's good exposure. Exposure to what? My eventual meltdown. Rachel tried to mediate. Bless her. Mom, maybe keep it small. Family and close friends. Nonsense, Gloria said, flipping her clipboard like a magician. The more the merrier. It'll be great for Mason too. He can meet some professionals, maybe make connections. I couldn't resist. Ah yes, because nothing screams, hire me, like a man eating deviled eggs in his own living room. Gloria shot me a tight smile that could curdle milk. Try to keep an open mind, dear. Oh, it's open, I said. Open like a trapdoor. The next 2 weeks became a blur of text messages, Amazon deliveries, and Gloria's unsolicited visits. She started treating me like her unpaid intern. Mason, could you move the dining table 6 inches to the left? Sure, and then 6 inches to the right, and then maybe directly into traffic? Don't be dramatic, she said, already on her phone. She had ideas for everything. Balloons weren't mature enough. Flowers were too predictable. Even the playlist had to go through her approval process. Your taste in music, she told me one night, is very young. Thank you, I said. That's because I still have hope left. One afternoon, while I was pretending to update my resume but actually Googling how to fake food poisoning, Gloria waltzed in uninvited again. I had a brilliant thought, she announced. What if we have the party catered by my company's event partner? Very sophisticated crowd, top-tier presentation. Sounds expensive, I said. You can't put a price on elegance. That's literally how prices work, Gloria. She ignored me and kept talking. Oh, and my boss might come. He adores family events. I froze mid-eye roll. Your boss? As in Edward Caldwell? The guy who runs your company and looks like he was carved from marble and stock options. The very same, she said proudly. He's so charming. You'd love him. I'd rather love a root canal, I said. But Rachel lit up. Really? Mr. Caldwell? That's amazing, Mom. He's such a big name in your field. I looked between them, realizing I was outnumbered. Yes, let's all meet the billionaire, I said dryly. Maybe he'll take me on as his charity case. Gloria smiled sweetly. Oh, don't be silly. He's very down to earth. Yeah, in the same way a private jet is eco-friendly. By that weekend, the party prep had reached apocalyptic levels. Gloria had taken over the living room, rearranging furniture like she was filming an HGTV episode titled How to Ruin a Marriage in 10 Simple Steps. She even replaced my recliner with an aesthetic seating option. Where's my chair? I asked, staring at the empty spot that once represented my one source of peace. It clashed with the vibe, she said. It clashed with you. I corrected. That too. The catering team came by for a tasting. Gloria micromanaged every dish. Too salty. Too bland. Too ambitious. Meanwhile, I stood there chewing on a canopy that cost more than my phone bill. You're aware this food isn't meant to cure cancer, right? I said. She glared. Presentation matters, Mason. Then maybe you should come with the hors d'oeuvres, I muttered. Rachel kicked me under the table again. I was starting to suspect she and my wife had a secret kick Mason when he's sarcastic alliance. As the party loomed closer, my stress level climbed like a cat in a thunderstorm. Every day brought new improvements from Gloria. She decided our lighting was too dim for elegance, so she installed new chandeliers. I came home one afternoon to find 2 electricians drilling holes into the ceiling while Gloria supervised like she was directing the moon landing. You're going to thank me when you see the ambience, she said. Oh, I'll see something. All right, I said. Probably the power bill. Even Rachel started showing cracks of doubt. One night, she flopped onto the couch beside me, exhausted. Okay, she admitted. Maybe this is getting a little out of hand. A little, I said. We've got an RSVP list longer than a wedding and a budget big enough to fund a small nation. At this point, we should just sell tickets. She means well, Rachel said weakly. She also meant well when she told me I should exhale less dramatically. I reminded her. And yet, here we are. She laughed, despite herself, then buried her face in her hands. I just want this to go smoothly. I reached over, squeezing her hand. It will, I said, because when the chaos inevitably hits, I'll be ready. Ready how? Emotionally detached. Then came the final straw, the invitations. Gloria showed up holding a stack of embossed envelopes that looked like they were meant for a royal coronation. "Aren't they stunning?" she beamed. I opened one. Gold trim. Handwritten calligraphy. The words "Hosted by Gloria Ellison and family" gleamed in cursive glory. I blinked. Gloria Ellison and family? I said slowly. "Not Rachel and Mason?" "Well, technically, I am family," she said innocently. "Your extended family. Like the appendix of this household." Rachel sighed. "Mom, you didn't even include Mason's name?" "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said. "Everyone knows who he is." "Apparently not," I said, waving the invitation. "Because right now, I sound like a +1 at my own house." I tried to be civil. I really did. But Gloria's ability to turn simple events into high-stakes drama was Olympic level. I half expected her to hire a red carpet photographer. The day before the party, she even brought in a decorator who looked like he charged by the sigh. He spent 4 hours debating whether our curtains were moody or tragic. I sat there with a beer, watching my living room transform into something that looked like a magazine spread titled Pretension Quarterly. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Rachel breathe softly beside me. I loved her truly, but I couldn't shake the sense that her mother's party proposal wasn't just about celebrating a birthday. It was about reclaiming control. Gloria had been embarrassed after the whole Bluetooth fiasco, and this was her comeback tour, her way to prove she still ran the show. "I'm calling it," I whispered to the ceiling. "This isn't a birthday party. It's a trap." Rachel stirred slightly. "What?" she murmured. "Nothing, baby," I whispered back. "Just mentally preparing for the social apocalypse tomorrow." "You'll behave, right?" she asked sleepily. I smiled, brushing her hair away from her face. "Of course. I'll smile, shake hands, and keep my sarcasm on a leash." She smiled too. Eyes still closed. "Thank you." I looked toward the door, where Gloria's clipboard leaned ominously against the wall, and muttered, "Leash or not, that woman's about to walk right into her own karma." The next evening would change everything, not just for me, but for her. Because she didn't realize it yet. But the same party she was planning to showcase her grace and influence was the exact stage where her entire empire would collapse in front of everyone who mattered to her. The decorations were perfect, the wine was expensive, and the playlist was curated to charm CEOs. But buried in all that glitter and confidence was one fatal flaw. Gloria had forgotten the golden rule of karma. It doesn't RSVP, but it always shows up. The morning of the party, I woke up with optimism. Mistake number 1. I actually thought, maybe today won't be that bad. That's how dumb hope works. It whispers sweet lies before reality slaps you with a clipboard named Gloria. I came downstairs in my favorite worn t-shirt and sweatpants, ready for a quiet breakfast before chaos. But there she was, my mother-in-law, in full command mode at 6:42 a.m., already wearing pearls like she was chairing a board meeting. "Oh good, you're awake," she chirped, holding a to-do list so long it could have been a Dead Sea Scroll. "We have so much to get done." I blinked. "It's 6 in the morning, Gloria." "Exactly," she said. "The early bird gets the aesthetic cohesion." "The early bird should mind its own business," I muttered. She ignored me, of course. Gloria never hears sarcasm. It's like her brain filters it out along with accountability. "I've arranged for the decorators to arrive by 7, she continued. "The caterers at 8. The string quartet by 10. "You hired a string quartet?" I asked, confused. "For a birthday party?" "Rachel deserves sophistication," she said proudly. "And sophistication has strings." "So does strangulation," I replied. "Coincidence?" Rachel came down mid-yawn, wearing her robe, hair messy, still half asleep. "Mom, why are you yelling at Dawn?" Gloria smiled like she'd just been complimented. "Not yelling, darling. Directing." "Same thing," Rachel mumbled. She gave me that tired smile couples exchange during shared suffering. "Coffee?" she asked. "Make it a bucket," I said. By the time the decorators arrived, our house looked like a war zone with centerpieces. There were boxes everywhere, candles, floral arrangements, and enough fairy lights to power Las Vegas. Gloria ran around barking orders like a general. "No, no, no. The gold vases go here, not there. This is a neutral palette event. People, not a circus." One poor decorator, a college kid named Trevor, looked seconds away from faking an injury. "Ma'am," he said timidly. The floral order was delayed. So we brought cream lilies instead of ivory. Cream? Gloria interrupted, aghast. Cream? This isn't a dairy farm, Trevor. I choked on my coffee, trying not to laugh. It's fine, Mom, Rachel said, trying to defuse the bomb. Cream looks great. It looks like compromise. Gloria snapped. The rest of the morning unfolded like a live-action sitcom. The string quartet arrived early, because of course they did, and started tuning in the living room while electricians were still adjusting the new chandeliers. Imagine Beethoven fighting with a power drill. I was in the kitchen, pretending to help by wiping non-existent crumbs, when Rachel whispered, I told you this was a mistake. Yup, I said. We're one argument away from a documentary on emotional terrorism. Then came the playlist incident. I had made one for fun, light jazz, Motown, some pop. You know, music that sounds like human beings might enjoy it. But Gloria vetoed it instantly. Too casual, she said. This is an upscale evening. We'll use my playlist. She plugged in her phone, and suddenly my kitchen was pulsing with classical violin and what sounded like Gregorian chanting. Perfect, she sighed. It says refined celebration. It says funeral with snacks, I said. We're not summoning spirits, Gloria. You just don't understand ambience. Oh, I understand. I'm just ignoring it for survival. At noon, the catering truck pulled in, and I swear, the chef looked terrified before even entering the house. Gloria met him at the door like a border inspector. Do you have the crab puffs? She asked. Yes, ma'am. The truffle sliders? Yes, ma'am. The imported chocolate fountain? Right here. Imported from where? Belgium. Good. American chocolate is for amateurs. I leaned against the counter. Pretty sure Belgium doesn't care, Gloria. She ignored me, again. I spent most of the afternoon playing human obstacle, trying to stay out of the way. Every time I sat down, someone handed me something. Mason, hold this centerpiece. Mason, move that table. Mason, why are you standing there like a bystander? Because that's exactly what I am, Gloria. A hostage bystander. Rachel tried to help, but even she was trapped in the chaos. Her mother had commandeered her own daughter's birthday like it was a corporate rebranding event. At one point, Rachel came upstairs to get dressed and found Gloria in her closet. Mom, she gasped. What are you doing? Just picking your outfit, Gloria said calmly, holding up 3 options like a stylist for royalty. You can't wear the blue dress. It's too daring. The burgundy is more mature. Mom, I'm 32, not the first lady. Well, tonight you'll look like one. Rachel looked at me for help, and I shrugged. She's already breached containment, I said. There's no saving us now. I went outside to escape, thinking maybe I could mow the lawn or dig a small escape tunnel. But even the backyard wasn't safe. Gloria had hired an ice sculpture artist. It's going to be shaped like an R, she said, beaming. For Rachel, it's going to melt, I said. Like my will to live. Stop being negative, she snapped. Do something useful. Move those wine crates to the bar. Yes, ma'am, I said, saluting with mock seriousness. Captain of Chaos, reporting for duty. By 4 p.m., I was drenched in sweat, wearing clothes that smelled like stress and shrimp cocktail. The house, I'll admit, looked incredible, like a Pinterest board threw up elegance all over it. But every inch of beauty screamed Gloria. Rachel's touches were small and fading. I caught her staring around quietly, her smile tight. I leaned in and said, You okay? She nodded. Yeah, just wish it felt like me. I glanced at the sea of gold decorations and candlelight. Yeah, it's missing something. What? Peace. When Rachel went upstairs to get ready, I was left alone with Gloria for what I can only describe as psychological endurance training. She hovered near the mirror, adjusting her pearl necklace. You'll behave tonight, right? She asked. Define behave. No sarcasm. That's like asking me not to blink. Mason, this is important for Rachel. Don't ruin it. I'm not the one turning her birthday into a job fair. You should be grateful I included your friends too. You mean the 2 people you invited without telling me? Exactly. You're welcome. I took a deep breath and decided to disengage. You can't argue with someone who thinks emotional manipulation is a leadership skill. Instead, I poured myself a soda, sat quietly, and watched her rehearse greetings in the mirror like she was auditioning for America's Next Top Hostess. Welcome, Edward, she said in her reflection. So lovely to see you. This is my daughter Rachel, and her husband, Mason. She practiced my name like it was an afterthought. I sipped my drink and whispered, "You forgot to add currently unemployed to my intro." At 6 p.m., the first guests arrived. Gloria floated around, greeting everyone with exaggerated charm. Rachel came down the stairs in her blue dress. Yes, the one her mom told her not to wear, and she looked stunning. Every head turned. Even Gloria's rehearsed smile faltered for half a second. I caught Rachel's eye and mouth. "You win." She smirked back, and for that brief moment, it felt like us versus the world again. The house filled fast. Laughter, chatter, clinking glasses, the kind of background noise that feels alive until you remember it's built on pretense. Gloria introduced me to everyone like a charity exhibit. "This is my son-in-law, Mason. He's between jobs right now, but keeping busy." Translation: this is Mason. He contributes nothing but sarcasm and body heat. I smiled, shook hands, and let my inner monologue do the violence. Every time someone said, "So, Mason, what do you do?" I'd say, "Right now, breathe and cope." At some point, Gloria cornered me near the bar. "Smile more," she hissed. "You look tense." "That's because I'm in a live episode of Who Wants to Lose Their Sanity." "Relax. Everyone loves a good host." "Good news, Gloria, I'm not the host." The string quartet switched to upbeat music, guests mingled, and for a second, I thought maybe I'd survive this circus. Then I heard it, Gloria's laugh, high-pitched and theatrical, coming from across the room. She was talking to a tall, silver-haired man. Mr. Edward Caldwell himself had arrived. "Mason," she called, waving me over like she was summoning a butler. My stomach dropped. Oh, this was it. The setup, the climax, the scene I'd been dreading since she mentioned him. She grinned at me as I approached, her arm linked with Caldwell's. "Edward, meet my daughter's husband. He's currently exploring new opportunities." There it was. The public execution, right on schedule. I smiled thinly and shook Caldwell's hand. "Pleasure," I said. "Likewise," he replied, polite but distant. Gloria leaned in. "Mason's been taking a little break since his company downsized. You know how it is. Some people just need time to find their path again." Caldwell nodded slowly. Indeed. The man had the patience of a monk. I'll give him that. But even he looked uncomfortable. Rachel appeared beside me, catching the tail end of the conversation. Her eyes flashed murder for half a second. "Mom," she said through a smile, "maybe stop talking about layoffs and paths. Let people enjoy the evening." "I'm just making conversation," Gloria protested. "No one wants to talk about unemployment at a party." "Well," I said calmly, "Gloria does. It's her favorite icebreaker." Caldwell actually chuckled at that, quietly, but it was there. The tiniest smirk. And that's when I realized something strange. For all her chaos, all her attempts to control everything, Gloria was cracking. Her jokes were forced, her voice too loud, her smile too stiff. She was desperate to impress her boss, to prove she was untouchable. But underneath, you could see the fear. The kind of fear that comes from knowing your own showmanship is wearing thin. I watched her flutter around the room, correcting waiters, over-explaining decor choices, practically sweating ambition. Rachel leaned in and whispered, "Do you see it?" "Yeah," I said. "The fall's coming." At that moment, I didn't know how karma planned to strike. I just knew it would. Maybe tonight. Maybe next week. But Gloria had built her throne out of arrogance, and those things don't last. For now, I smiled, took Rachel's hand, and whispered, "Happy birthday, baby. May the fireworks start soon." By 7:15 p.m., the house looked like it had been hijacked by a luxury event planner with a mild god complex. Candlelight glowed off every polished surface. The chandeliers sparkled like they'd been waiting their whole lives for Instagram. And the smell of expensive food floated through the air, crab puffs, truffle sliders, and what I later discovered were artisan macaroons, which basically meant overpriced cookies with better PR. I stood near the front door, wearing the suit Rachel picked, holding a drink I didn't need, watching people flood into my home like it was an open house for judgment. Rachel, radiant in her blue dress, greeted her friends with genuine smiles. I admired her from across the room. My wife could make chaos look elegant. Gloria, on the other hand, floated between guests like she owned stock in self-importance. "Welcome, welcome," she said to every new arrival. "I'm Gloria, the hostess." The hostess. She said it like I'd rented the house from her. The first wave of guests was manageable. Rachel's friends were normal, funny, and blessedly unaware of my unemployment saga. We laughed, told stories, even took selfies. For a brief moment, I thought, maybe this will actually be fine. Then Gloria's colleagues arrived, and the vibe shifted faster than a Wi-Fi signal in a thunderstorm. They came in suits sharp enough to cut glass and smiles that screamed networking opportunity. I could practically hear their internal LinkedIn notifications pinging. Gloria introduced me to everyone as if I were a mildly interesting science exhibit. "This is my son-in-law, Mason," she said to a woman in pearls. "He's in between opportunities." The woman smiled politely. "Oh, that's so brave." "Brave?" I echoed. "Yeah, I wake up every morning and heroically don't cry into my cereal." She blinked, unsure if I was joking. I was. Mostly. Every introduction came with a tiny dagger. "This is Mason. He's helping around the house while he considers his next move." Translation: this man has no purpose. "This is Mason. He's got such a good sense of humor about everything." Translation: this man copes through sarcasm because reality punched him in the throat. Rachel noticed, bless her, and swooped in like my PR manager. "Actually," she said to one group, "Mason's been consulting for a few logistics startups. He's got options." Gloria laughed too loud. "Options? That's one way to put it." I smiled, teeth tight. "You know, Gloria, if you ever lose your job, you'd make a great motivational speaker for people who hate themselves." She didn't even flinch. She was in her element, holding court with her coworkers, sipping champagne like liquid validation. The food was served, and I have to admit, the catering was flawless. People were actually impressed. Compliments flew. "This truffle risotto is divine. The decor is breathtaking. Gloria, you outdid yourself." Every compliment to her landed like caffeine to a narcissist. She was glowing, practically vibrating with pride. That's when she started taking credit for everything. "Oh, thank you," she'd say. "Yes, I designed the layout myself." "Oh, Rachel's dress? I helped her pick it." "Oh, Mason's suit? I told him to wear something that made him look employable." I swear I could hear my blood pressure rising to the beat of the background music. I found refuge near the bar, nursing a drink and silently reciting affirmations like a man clinging to sanity. Rachel joined me for a minute, her smile tired but loyal. "You holding up?" she whispered. "Barely," I said. "Your mother just told someone I'm considering a career in domestic management." She said, "What?" "Yeah, apparently that's what unemployment is called when you fold laundry." Rachel groaned. "I'll handle her." "No, don't. She'll just pivot to victim mode. Let her dig her own hole." "You really think she'll implode?" "Rachel," I said, lowering my voice. "This woman's ego is a ticking time bomb. It's not if, it's when." I was right, because 20 minutes later, Gloria's need to impress reached its final form. Public humiliation, her favorite party trick. She was chatting with two of her colleagues when she spotted me across the room and called out, "Mason, come here." Her tone was sweet, like bait. I walked over, cautious. "This is my boss's right-hand man, Greg," she said. "Greg, this is Mason, my son-in-law. He's between jobs, but staying positive." Greg smiled, polite but bored. "Ah, the market's tough right now." "Oh, it's not the market," Gloria interrupted. "He's just taking time to find his confidence again." The group laughed softly, like she'd said something adorably cruel. I froze, half a smile still on my face. Rachel's head turned from across the room. She'd heard it too. The look on her face was pure disbelief, mixed with the kind of anger that could melt marble. I could feel every pair of eyes nearby flick toward me, waiting for my reaction. You ever feel your pride stand up and start clapping in your chest? That was me. For months, I'd let her jab me, twist every knife, hide every insult under concern. But this time, in front of her own colleagues, with my wife watching, something inside me switched. I smiled wider, calm, easy. "Confidence, huh? You mean the one I lost the day you started giving me advice?" The laughter stopped. Gloria blinked, stunned. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said, sipping my drink. "If confidence had a natural predator, it'd be you." Greg choked on his wine, trying not to laugh. Rachel bit her lip to hide her smirk. Gloria's nostrils flared. "Mason, that was uncalled for." "So was the part where you turned my wife's birthday into a TED Talk on how I'm not good enough. But here we are." Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no script. Before she could recover, someone tapped her on the shoulder. Gloria, Mr. Caldwell just arrived, a co-worker whispered. She straightened instantly, brushing off her dress, switching to fake charm mode faster than a politician in an election year. Oh, wonderful, she said. Everyone behave, my boss is here. And just like that, the night hit a new level of tension. Caldwell's arrival changed the entire atmosphere. Conversations hushed, people adjusted posture, and Gloria practically skipped to greet him at the door. The woman transformed into an overachieving intern in the blink of an eye. Rachel sighed beside me. This is it, she whispered. She's going to show off until something snaps. Good, I said. Let's see karma in action. From across the room, we watched Gloria introduce Caldwell to her guests like she was hosting a fundraiser. She hovered beside him, laughed too high, gestures too big. This is my daughter, Rachel, she said. And this, she paused dramatically, is my son-in-law, Mason. He's currently unemployed, but very supportive. Every molecule in the room froze. I swear even the shrimp cocktail paused mid-tray. Caldwell looked from her to me, eyebrows raised. I smiled, calm as a saint. Evening, I said. Lovely party. I'd say Gloria outdid herself, but that would imply she's done something less than excessive before. The guests chuckled. Caldwell's lip twitched like he was fighting a grin. Gloria's smile faltered. Oh, Mason, you're such a comedian, she said tightly. At least one of us is laughing, I replied. Caldwell studied us both for a moment, the way a teacher watches students fail a group project, then turned to her and said, Gloria, I've been meaning to talk to you about professionalism. Her face went white. Oh, yes, let's talk later tonight. Her laugh came out strained. Of course, I'd love that. I turned to Rachel and whispered, that's not a meeting. That's a firing preview. She squeezed my hand under the table, eyes wide but smiling. Mason, what? I said innocently. I didn't do anything. Exactly. That's what's terrifying. For the rest of the evening, Gloria tried to recover, but she was off balance. Every joke fell flat. Every compliment sounded forced. Her boss chatted with guests, and every so often, I'd catch him glancing at me with an amused curiosity, like he knew more than he was letting on. By the time dessert was served, the atmosphere had shifted again. Gloria was sweating under her makeup, her perfect posture slowly crumbling. Rachel leaned over and whispered, You were right. I grinned. I usually am. Don't gloat. Too late. As people started dancing, I stepped aside, letting the music and laughter fill the room. The night wasn't over, not by a long shot. Gloria had built this party as her stage, her redemption arc, her grand return to grace. What she didn't know was that the curtain was about to fall, hard. And when it did, I'd be standing right there, front row, popcorn ready. You could feel it the second the doorbell rang. That collective inhale, that subtle shift when everyone realizes the guest of honor just showed up. It was like royalty had arrived. Conversations hushed, champagne glasses froze mid-air, and Gloria straightened her pearls like she was preparing for Judgment Day. She even dabbed her forehead with a napkin, whispering, He's here, as if Edward Caldwell were the second coming of corporate Jesus. Now, I'd heard about the man, Gloria's boss, the untouchable CEO of Caldwell and Company. Real estate mogul, investment genius, silver-haired charm machine. The guy who probably signs contracts with pins made from meteor fragments. Gloria worshipped him so much she once said, Edward doesn't make mistakes. To which I replied, except hiring you. She didn't laugh. She practically sprinted to the door, her heels clicking like a countdown to disaster. When she opened it, there he was, tall, calm, and annoyingly put together. The kind of man who smells like expensive cologne and quarterly profits. He smiled politely. Evening, Gloria. Edward, she gushed. You made it. Please, come in. Welcome, welcome. She turned back toward the crowd like a magician introducing her final trick. Everyone, this is Mr. Edward Caldwell, my boss and one of the most respected men in our industry. Applause. Real applause. I swear half the room clapped like he'd just cured inflation. Caldwell smiled modestly, clearly used to the worship. Rachel and I exchanged glances, both of us silently agreeing this was about to get entertaining. Gloria led him around like a trophy. This is my daughter, Rachel, she said proudly. You've heard me talk about her. Caldwell smiled, shaking her hand. Indeed. The birthday girl. Happy birthday. Rachel, ever the diplomat, smiled. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. It's lovely to finally meet you. He nodded, then his eyes turned to me. And I swear, Gloria's entire demeanor changed in an instant. She stood straighter, her smile tightening. And this, she said with that sing-song voice people use right before committing social homicide, is my son-in-law, Mason. He's currently unemployed, but has such potential. It was like the entire room leaned forward in slow motion. Someone dropped a fork. The string quartet paused mid-song. I blinked, processing. I knew she'd throw a jab, but currently unemployed with potential? That was a new low, even for her. Rachel froze beside me, eyes flashing. I could practically see her calculating whether smacking her mother in front of her boss would count as a felony. Me? I just smiled. You know the kind of calm you get when you've given up all expectation of dignity? That's where I was. Pleasure to meet you, sir, I said, shaking Caldwell's hand. It's not as exciting as being Gloria's son-in-law, but I try. Caldwell chuckled softly, his eyes sharp. Ah, yes, Gloria's mentioned you. All good things, I hope, I said. She's a real fan of public character assassination. His smile widened just slightly. I can see where your wife gets her humor. From surviving her mother, I said without missing a beat. Rachel almost snorted into her wine. Gloria's face turned the shade of an undercooked steak. Mason, she hissed under her breath. Maybe let's keep things light? Oh, I thought we were, I said. Your intro really set the tone. Caldwell waved off the tension with effortless grace. No harm done, he said, looking at me with a faint spark of amusement. You have a sense of humor, Mason. I like that. Gloria jumped in, panicked. Oh, he's something, all right. But let's talk business, shall we? Edward, I wanted to show you the setup. Everything's perfect. She started walking him through the house, like a realtor on commission. The decor, the lighting, even the catering, all top-notch. I oversaw every detail personally. I sipped my drink, following behind them with Rachel, whispering, she's going full audition mode. Rachel whispered back, if she curtsies, I'm leaving. Caldwell, polite as ever, nodded through every boast. It's impressive, he said. You've done well, Gloria. She glowed. Like literally. If smugness were a light source, she could have powered the city grid. Thank you, she said, tilting her head in faux humility. I take pride in my leadership. And then, she made her fatal mistake. They stopped near the bar where two waiters were serving champagne. Caldwell asked, so, Gloria, are these your personal guests or company associates? She smiled. A mix of both. I thought it would be nice for everyone to meet my family. You know, my daughter and her husband. She hesitated on husband, like the word had thorns. Caldwell looked at her. You invited me to your daughter's birthday, not a corporate mixer. Well, Gloria said quickly, I believe in synergy between personal and professional life. Ah, he said mildly, I believe in boundaries. The silence that followed could have frozen fire. Rachel turned away, biting her lip to stop a laugh. I nearly choked on my drink. But Gloria, determined to recover, went right back into overcompensation mode. Oh, you'll love the speech I prepared, she announced suddenly. It's heartfelt, about gratitude, growth, and the importance of family. She climbed the nearest step to address the room before anyone could stop her. Rachel muttered, oh no. I whispered, oh yes. Gloria clinked her glass dramatically. Everyone, may I have your attention? The chatter faded. Even the string quartet stopped mid-note. She smiled wide. First, thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my daughter, Rachel, the light of my life. And of course, for meeting my wonderful boss, Mr. Caldwell. Applause again. She ate it up. Now, as you all know, family means everything to me. Rachel rolled her eyes. And though times haven't always been easy, we've stayed strong. Even when some of us have stumbled. Her gaze flicked right at me. My jaw dropped. I could practically hear the gasp ripple through the room. Rachel whispered, she did not just say that. She did. I whispered back. And she's about to regret it. Gloria continued, blissfully unaware of the social suicide she was committing. But through faith, perseverance, and maybe a little guidance, we always find our footing again. Isn't that right, Mason? She beamed down at me like a preacher calling out a sinner in the front row. I smiled up at her. Absolutely, I said. Though in my experience, the people doing the guiding usually need a map more than the ones being guided. A few people laughed nervously. Caldwell's lips twitched again. This man was enjoying the drama. Gloria tried to keep her composure. Well, she said, that's one way to put it. Caldwell set his glass down. No, Gloria, he said quietly. I think that's exactly right. You could have heard a pin drop. She blinked, confused. I'm sorry. Caldwell looked around the room, calm and composed. You know, I've always believed that true leadership starts with humility. But lately, I've noticed arrogance disguised as mentorship. It's toxic, especially in a professional setting. He smiled faintly. Wouldn't you agree? Gloria stammered, color draining from her face. Oh, of course. Good, he said. Then you'll understand why this will come as no surprise. He took a sip of his drink, looked her dead in the eye, and said, You're fired. I swear time stopped. Glasses froze mid-clink, laughter died mid-breath, and Gloria's soul visibly left her body for a brief vacation. What? She gasped. Edward, you can't. I can, he said simply. And I am. Monday morning, HR will finalize everything. Enjoy your evening. Rachel's jaw dropped. Mine didn't, because I was too busy trying not to laugh. The room was silent, electric, alive with disbelief. And then, as if on cue, someone whispered, Holy crap! And suddenly everyone found an excuse to be somewhere else. Gloria just stood there, trembling, her perfect smile cracking. This is a misunderstanding, she said weakly. I've given so much, and taken more, Caldwell interrupted. You humiliate people you claim to love, Gloria. You use charm like a weapon. Consider this accountability. With that, he set his glass down and walked out, leaving the room buzzing. Rachel exhaled a long, slow breath, her hand gripping mine. Did that just happen? She whispered. I grinned. Oh, it happened. Karma just showed up in a suit and tie. Gloria turned toward me, eyes wide with fury. This is your fault, she spat. Finally, I said, raising my glass. Something I'm happy to take credit for. If you've ever watched a tower of Jenga collapse in slow motion, that was Gloria, except her blocks were made of pride, reputation, and $300 moisturizer. For a solid 10 seconds after Caldwell walked out, she stood frozen, one hand clutching her champagne glass like she was debating whether to sip it or throw it at someone. The room had gone eerily quiet, the kind of silence that buzzes with unspoken, oh my God, did that just happen? Energy. You could practically hear the party die. Then, finally, movement. Gloria blinked, turned toward me with wild eyes, and said, You. Her voice cracked like a villain in the third act of a Disney movie. This is your fault. I took a slow sip of my drink. Finally, I said, something I actually get credit for tonight. Rachel grabbed my arm, whispering, Don't, Mason. But it was too late. Gloria was unraveling right there between the canopy table and the chocolate fountain, mascara starting to smudge as her emotional support pearls trembled. You embarrassed me, she shrieked. You humiliated me in front of my boss. Correction, I said. You humiliated yourself. I just provided background commentary. A few guests were still pretending to check their phones, clearly trying to avoid eye contact, while also not missing a second of the drama. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. One of the violinists whispered, Should we go? And the cellist muttered, Not for all the tips in the world. Gloria's volume increased. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? She yelled. My career. My standing. My integrity. I offered. Pretty sure that ship sailed before dessert. Rachel facepalmed. Mom, stop. Please. You're making it worse. Worse. Gloria gasped, turning on her daughter like she'd just found betrayal number 2. You're siding with him? I'm siding with reality, Rachel said, voice low but firm. You called him unemployed in front of your boss. You've been treating him like dirt for months, and tonight it came back to bite you. I wanted to applaud her. Rachel rarely lost her cool, but when she did, it was like watching diplomacy finally pick up a sword. Gloria's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out, which was historic, the first documented silence from her in recorded time. Then she did what all cornered egos do. She doubled down. I was trying to help you, she snapped. You'd still be nothing without me. That's when the remaining guests collectively decided to nope out. Within 60 seconds, my living room looked like a crime scene after cleanup. Just discarded glasses, melting ice, and the faint smell of scandal. One guy even took a crab puff to go. Caldwell, bless him, had already vanished like a ghost who delivers karma and dips. It was just the three of us now, me, Rachel, and the human meltdown machine. Gloria paced the floor, muttering to herself. He'll regret this. He'll realize what a mistake he's made. I'll call him first thing Monday. Yeah, I said. Definitely call the guy who just fired you at your daughter's birthday party. That'll win him over. Shut up, Mason. She snapped. This is your fault. You made me look bad. Gloria, I said, setting my glass down. You didn't need me for that. You came fully equipped. Rachel gasped softly. Mason, no, he needs to hear this. Gloria barked, voice rising again. You think you're clever, don't you? You think your little jokes make you special? You're a failure, Mason. A joke. Funny, I said. You said the same thing about the decorator, and he got paid. I'm sensing a pattern. Her face flushed crimson, and for a split second, I thought she might actually throw something. Rachel stepped between us like a referee at a heavyweight match. Enough. Both of you. Mom, go home. Mason, stop fueling it. I'm not fueling it, I said calmly. I'm just enjoying the fireworks. You know, the one she lit herself. Gloria's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not the performance-grade ones she usually kept handy. I did everything for you, Rachel, she said, her voice trembling. Everything. And this is how you repay me? By standing here while your husband ruins me. You ruined yourself, Mom, Rachel said softly. And you know it. That was the final blow. Gloria staggered back a little, like Rachel's words physically hit her. She looked around the room, the scattered decorations, the flickering candles, the empty champagne flutes, and for the first time in forever, she looked small. The Queen of Control had lost her crown, and she didn't know how to breathe without it. I just wanted respect, she whispered. It should have made me feel bad. It didn't. It made me feel human, because I knew what that hunger felt like, to want validation so badly that you start confusing cruelty for confidence. But Gloria? She'd weaponized it. She'd built an empire on it. And now, she was standing in the rubble, still trying to blame the person who'd been holding up the walls the whole time. Rachel sighed, rubbing her temples. Mom, please, just go home. Sleep. We'll talk later. Gloria looked at her daughter like she didn't recognize her. You're choosing him over me? No, Rachel said quietly. I'm choosing sanity. For a second, I thought Gloria might argue again, maybe even collapse into another scene. But something in her just gave up. She straightened her shoulders, wiped her tears, and said, Fine, you'll regret this. Already do, I said automatically. Rachel shot me a look that could have melted steel. What? I'm not made of stone. Gloria grabbed her purse, gave one last dramatic glance at the room. Her masterpiece turned battlefield, and marched out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the chandelier. A few flower petals fell from a centerpiece, fluttering to the floor like the remnants of her reputation. Silence. Real, peaceful silence. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all evening. Well, I said, that went better than expected. Rachel turned to me slowly. Better? Yeah. No one died. The house didn't catch fire, and your mom only got metaphorically destroyed. Mason. What? I said, grinning. You've got to admit, that was cinematic. If life had background music, the orchestra would have hit a dramatic chord right when Caldwell said, You're fired. Rachel groaned, but couldn't help laughing. You're unbelievable. Thank you, I said. It's my best quality. We spent the next hour cleaning up in silence, tossing empty glasses and gathering napkins while the adrenaline wore off. Every now and then, Rachel would shake her head and mutter, I still can't believe that happened. Believe it, I said. That woman's ego just got a one-way ticket to humility. Do you ever stop making jokes? Only when I'm asleep. Maybe. When the last dish was done, we collapsed on the couch, surrounded by the fading scent of perfume, food, and poetic justice. Rachel rested her head on my shoulder. You know, she said softly, I hate how messy that was, but I'm also relieved. Because she's gone? Because it's over. We can finally breathe. I kissed the top of her head. Yeah, I said. And if karma ever needs a PR agent, I'm applying. She laughed quietly. You're ridiculous. I know. But admit it, you married me for it. Maybe, she said, smiling. Just try not to celebrate too hard, okay? Oh, come on, I said. A little celebration never hurt anyone. Except your mom's career. She smacked my arm. Mason. What? Too soon. The clock struck midnight, and for once, the house was calm. No chaos, no insults, no soundtrack of passive-aggressive sighs. Just us, two people who'd survived a party, a scandal, and a mother-in-law-shaped hurricane. I glanced around the room, at the flickering candles and the empty space where Gloria had stood minutes ago, and I couldn't help but smile. "Hey," I said, "you realize this is officially your most memorable birthday ever?" Rachel laughed softly. "That's one way to put it. Trust me," I said, pulling her close. "Years from now, when someone asks what the best gift you ever got was, you'll say, watching my mom get fired in real time." "You're terrible," she said, laughing into my chest. "And yet," I replied, still employed by life. 2 weeks after the birthday massacre, I woke up to the most beautiful sound known to mankind: silence. No Gloria footsteps, no passive-aggressive phone calls. No, "Did you send out any resumes today?" It was bliss. Rachel was sipping coffee in her robe, smiling at me like someone who'd just survived a natural disaster and found civilization again. "I can't believe she hasn't called," she said. "Oh, she's called," I replied. "I just blocked her." Freedom is a setting on your phone. Life was peaceful for about 4 days. Then my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I ignore those because they're either spam or my car's extended warranty trying to haunt me. But something made me answer. "Mason Rowe," a calm, confident voice said. "This is Edward Caldwell." I nearly spilled my coffee. Hi, Mr. Caldwell. If this is about the party, I swear I had nothing to do with the firing. I was just a witness with snacks." He laughed. "I know. Relax. I wanted to talk to you." That sentence had big plot twist incoming energy. He told me he'd been thinking about that night. Most people in that situation would have snapped or stormed out. You kept your cool and your humor. I didn't know what to say, so I defaulted to sarcasm. "Well, I figured if I was going down, I might as well get a good one-liner in." He chuckled. "You handled it well. I like people who stay steady when things fall apart. How would you feel about joining my team?" For a moment, I thought he was kidding. "You mean like work for you? The man who fired my mother-in-law?" "Precisely," he said. "You seem to understand people. We need someone like that at Caldwell and Company." I looked around my living room, still half decorated from the party that ended her career, and grinned. "Sir, that's the best revenge offer I've ever heard." He set up a meeting for the next morning. I spent the entire night ironing a shirt that had been retired since the Obama administration. Rachel watched me pace. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "I'm about to interview with the guy who publicly executed your mother's career," I said. "Nervous doesn't even cover it." She kissed my cheek. "You've got this. Just be yourself." "Great," I said. So half panic, half comedy. Caldwell's office was exactly what you'd expect. Glass walls, city view, and a desk so expensive it probably had its own 401k. He offered me coffee and a seat. We talked about my background in logistics, my time managing teams, and how I handled pressure. Finally, he said, "I need someone to run our new operations division. It's not glamorous, but it's yours if you want it." I blinked. "Just like that." He smiled. "Just like that. I believe in rewarding grace under fire." "Then, sir," I said, "you've hired the most gracefully sarcastic man in America." I walked out of that building a new man. It wasn't just about the job. It was about finally winning the unwinnable war. I'd gone from unemployed punchline to executive hire, and the woman who'd spent months belittling me was now Googling how to update resume after public termination. That night, I told Rachel the news. She screamed, hugged me, and started crying happy tears. Then she paused and said, "Oh my God, Mom's going to lose her mind." "Good," I said. "It'll give her something to do." The rumors spread fast. Apparently, Caldwell's decision to fire her was the office's favorite gossip topic for weeks. One coworker even leaked the story to a corporate blog. Headline: Executive fired at daughter's party after public insult. The comments section was brutal. Some called it the boldest resignation they'd ever seen. Others just wrote, "Don't mess with karma." I printed one comment and framed it in my office later. The son-in-law deserved a raise. Meanwhile, Gloria's job prospects dried up faster than cheap mascara in the sun. She tried consulting for a smaller firm, but word got around. Nobody wanted to hire the woman who'd been fired by Caldwell himself for ethical embarrassment. Rachel and I kept our distance. She'd call once in a while, leave voicemails that started with, "I hope you're both well," and ended with, "I still don't think this was fair." Eventually, the call stopped. My first month at Caldwell & Co. was like stepping into a different universe. Competent people, decent coffee, and no one accusing me of underachieving over breakfast. Caldwell treated me like a peer, not a project. He'd stop by my office, ask for updates, and actually listen. When I thanked him again for the opportunity, he said, "You earned it, Mason. You just needed someone to see past the noise." And man, was there a lot of noise. One afternoon, while I was reviewing a proposal, Caldwell walked in and said, "You know, Gloria called me." I froze. "Oh, she apologized," he said. "She said you were a good man and she was wrong." I blinked. "She actually said that?" He smiled. "Well, not in those exact words, but close enough." For a second, I felt something I hadn't expected, pity. Maybe she finally saw what her pride had cost her. Or maybe she was just tired of fighting the mirror. That night, I came home with a bottle of champagne and 2 takeout steaks. Rachel looked at me, suspicious. "What's the occasion?" I popped the cork. "Nothing special. Just celebrating the fact that Karma's a full-time employee now." She laughed, clinked her glass against mine, and said, "To fresh starts." Fresh starts, I agreed. And as we sat there on the couch, wine in hand, lights low, I realized something simple and beautiful. Sometimes your life doesn't collapse to break you. Sometimes it just needs to fall apart so you can build it right. If there's one thing I've learned from surviving a mother-in-law with the temperament of a caffeinated general, it's that peace doesn't just arrive. It sneaks up on you when you least expect it. For me, peace came in the form of a quiet Saturday morning, 2 months after the party that changed everything. I was sitting in my favorite recliner, the one Gloria once exiled for clashing with the vibe, with a mug of coffee so perfect it could have solved minor world conflicts. Rachel was upstairs still sleeping, the sunlight poured through the blinds, and I thought, for the first time in a long time, I'm good. No drama, no shouting, no unsolicited career advice disguised as motherly concern. Just caffeine, silence, and the smug satisfaction of karmic balance. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again, I considered ignoring it. I mean, that's how all my life's chaos starts, but curiosity won. "Hello," I said. A familiar voice answered. "Mason, it's Gloria." I stared at the wall for a full 2 seconds. "Ah," I said. "The ghost of birthdays past." "Don't start," she sighed. "I wanted to talk." "Is this a threat or a request?" "Coffee," she said simply. "Just coffee, please." Now look, I'm not an idiot. I knew this had all the makings of a sequel no one asked for. But something in her tone sounded different. Not sharp, not performative, just tired. Against my better judgment, I agreed. "Fine," I said. "But if you start another monologue about my career choices, I'm faking food poisoning." We met at a small cafe downtown. Neutral ground. No chandeliers, no string quartets, no witnesses. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone was the power suit queen with pearls and posture sharper than a tax audit. She looked human. Jeans, cardigan, no makeup. Her smile was small and uncertain. "Hi," she said softly. I stood, nodding. "Hi. You look less terrifying." She laughed, actually laughed. Not the kind of laugh she used to fill silence at parties, but a real one. "I deserve that," she said. We ordered coffees, black for me, oat milk latte for her, and for a few minutes, neither of us said anything. Just awkward small talk about the weather, the cafe music, and how their croissants were life-changing. It felt surreal, sitting across from the woman who once introduced me as the unemployed charity case to her boss. Finally, she sighed and said, "You're expecting an apology." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm expecting nothing. That's the only way to survive a conversation with you." She smiled faintly. "Fair, but I owe you one anyway." I blinked. "You're actually saying the A word?" "Yes," she said, staring into her cup. "I was awful. I let my pride and my reputation come before family. Before Rachel. Before you. And it cost me everything." For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to throw sarcasm at her. She looked genuinely small, not weak, but humbled. "Why now?" I asked. "Because silence gets loud when you lose everything," she said quietly. "And lately, I've had a lot of silence." She looked up at me. "You make Rachel happy, Mason." I didn't want to see it because if she didn't need me, then who was I? That one hit different. I took a sip of coffee just to have something to do with my hands. So this whole time, you weren't trying to ruin us. You were just insecure? Exactly, she said, giving a self-deprecating smile. Turns out even control freaks can have abandonment issues. I nodded slowly. You know, if you'd led with that instead of "you're not husband material," we could have saved a lot of headaches. She laughed again. I know, but back then, I couldn't stand not being the most important person in Rachel's life. Trust me, I said. You still make the top 3. We talked for over an hour. No arguments, no interruptions, just 2 people airing out years of bad blood. She told me she'd been seeing a therapist. I figured I owed it to society, and that she'd started volunteering at a community center teaching leadership skills. Actual leadership, she clarified. Not the kind that involves micromanaging floral arrangements. By the time we finished, the tension between us had melted into something that almost felt like friendship, or at least a ceasefire. As we stood to leave, she said, "You're good for her, Mason. For Rachel. I see that now." I grinned. That's funny. I've been saying that for years. She rolled her eyes, smiling. Don't ruin the moment. We walked outside, and before heading to her car, she turned and said, "For what it's worth, I really am happy for you. About the new job, the house, everything." Thanks, I said. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're recalibrating. That's one way to put it. She hesitated, then added, "Tell Rachel I love her." I will, I said. And Gloria? Yes. If you ever plan another party, I'm moving to another state. She laughed. Deal. Watching her drive off, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the smug kind you get from winning an argument, but the quiet, satisfying kind that comes from finally closing a chapter. That evening, Rachel and I sat on the porch with wine, watching the sunset melt into the horizon. So, she asked, how'd it go? I leaned back. Shockingly civil. She apologized. Rachel's eyebrows shot up. She what? I know. I checked her pulse. It's still her. But yeah, she admitted she was wrong. Rachel smiled softly. That's huge. Yeah, I said. Apparently losing her job, her status, and half her dignity was the best therapy money couldn't buy. She laughed, setting her glass down. I'm proud of you. I know that couldn't have been easy. Honestly, I said. It was like watching a deleted scene from an alternate timeline where Gloria's a decent human being. Weirdly refreshing. Do you forgive her? Mostly, though I reserve the right to bring it up dramatically during future arguments. Fair, she said, leaning her head on my shoulder. We sat there quietly for a while, listening to the crickets, feeling the kind of calm you only appreciate after surviving chaos. You know, Rachel said, when I think about everything that happened, I still can't believe how it all turned out. What do you mean? You lost your job, Mom lost hers, and somehow you both ended up better for it. Yeah, I said, smiling. It's almost poetic, like Karma's a screenwriter with a wicked sense of humor. A few weeks later, life felt fully back on track. My work with Caldwell was going great, challenging but rewarding. The man even had a sense of humor. At one meeting, he smirked and said, "You know, Mason, every time I see you, I think about that party. Legendary stuff." Please don't, I said. I get PTSD every time someone offers me champagne now. He laughed. Consider it a reminder that sometimes the right chaos creates the right change. Gloria stayed in touch, sparingly. She sent Rachel occasional texts, less commands from the Queen and more updates from a humbled citizen. Things like, made lasagna today, didn't burn it, or found a new book club. No one's cried yet. She even sent me a holiday card that said, to my favorite son-in-law and my most patient teacher. Inside she wrote, "Thank you for teaching me that control doesn't equal love." I almost framed it. But my favorite part of this whole saga came unexpectedly. Caldwell invited Rachel and me to a company gala. Nothing fancy, just a black tie event celebrating leadership. We showed up, mingled, and halfway through the evening, he got on stage to give a speech. Tonight, he said, we celebrate integrity, not perfection, but honesty in the face of pressure. Sometimes we meet people who remind us what that looks like. He paused, smiled at me from the stage, and added, sometimes they even show us at birthday parties. The crowd laughed. I just sank into my seat, muttering, oh God, I'm never living this down. Rachel was crying from laughter. On the drive home, she looked at me and said, You realize you've gone full circle, right? How so? You started as the unemployed punchline at a birthday party and ended as the guy whose story became a corporate lesson. I grinned. Yeah, but let's be honest, it's mostly because I had great comedic timing. And an unshakable wife? She said, smiling. That too, I said. Later that night, as we got home, I found myself staring at the quiet living room. The same room where everything had once fallen apart. Now it was peaceful, warm, ours. The faint hum of the fridge filled the silence, and I couldn't help but chuckle. You know, I said aloud, if Karma ever writes Yelp reviews, I'm giving her 5 stars. Rachel, already half asleep on the couch, mumbled, You're ridiculous. Maybe, I said, kissing her forehead. But you can't argue with the results. Because here's the thing about justice. It doesn't always wear a robe or carry a gavel. Sometimes it wears a tailored suit, drinks champagne, and says, You're fired. And sometimes, months later, it shows up with a latte and says, I'm sorry. Either way, it's worth the wait.